I'm so happy to have Daniel DeMelo back here once again. Thanks for coming back,
Happy to
Daniel.
be here.
This is like a weird kind of reunion
It is a
because,
reunion.
yeah, I'll break this down. We did our first episode with you almost a year ago. Especially by the time this comes out, it'll be almost a year exactly.
Yeah.
And it was also Kristen's first time co-hosting,
That's right.
Right.
so that's going on. And this is a record-breaking week for me. I've done 4 episodes, which is more than I've ever done in a week. So it's just kind of there's a lot going on here.
There's a lot going on here. Yeah.
And Andy's not telling tales out of school, but I'll just tell on myself. I did not know what to expect. When
Yeah,
he
that's true.
asked me,
That's
I
true.
said, I don't know that I want this to be my first one. Because I don't know. I went to your website and I just thought, I didn't see, now I know what your priorities are, but I guess I didn't see that on your website.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell when you're that far out from the election.
It's so
Yeah.
far away. Yeah,
Yeah.
you started so early.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I said, well, yeah, let's just do it. Um, and I mean, I think we both did liked you so much. It was
Yeah.
so much fun.
Yeah,
And I
we're
had no idea how data driven you were.
super impressed. Yeah, kind of like we
Appreciate
were.
that.
This episode will be out by then, but with Sam Adams when he came
Oh
by,
my gosh. Sam Adams
we
blew
were
me away.
like kind of floored by that. But
Floored by it. Yeah, that's
um,
right.
yeah, just tell. I was curious, like, how is it going in these? By the time this comes out, there'll be days before the election. So, just
And
curious, like,
busy, busy, busy. Walking every day,
yeah,
talking every day, just trying to not have an idle moment.
yeah, yeah. Your schedule seems pretty packed, and
Yeah. Gonna go wave the Burnside Bridge tomorrow morning.
yeah. I saw
That's
you.
good.
You had a photo of that from you when you did that a couple weeks ago or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that fun? You just stand out there and I like
Is it
that.
Yeah.
fun?
I
It's
like
fun,
it.
honestly. Yeah. People wave. You get like people
Honks.
honks.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
I feel like a school child again, on
Nobody
the
flips
bus.
you off.
Yeah. A few
Definitely a
flip
school
flops.
child on a junior high bus.
Yeah.
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 I think it's cool because I don't know. So there's so many factors in this race, but I think just nameability is so important. Just getting
Yeah.
that name out there. Um,
That's true.
yeah, and I've been asking people this because, and if you, I'm sure by this point you have your ballot if you're watching this now. But
I don't have. Oh, by the
I'm
time
saying,
we
yeah,
release it.
yeah,
Well,
In the
Andy,
future.
I mean, Andy is being modest. Andy, you have worked harder to publicize candidates, harder
I'm
than
trying.
any outlet,
I'm realizing now, and
mainstream or not.
maybe I'll do this when this is out. But I was trying to think if I want to make one web page with all the
Oh my
districts and put all the
gosh.
episode links on
Good
there.
idea.
You are. You're the
Somehow.
most ambitious person I know, and it's really a service to the city. Thank
Thanks, I
you.
appreciate it. I just love it. I'm a political nerd, and I love talking about this stuff, especially local politics. Really want to engage people with local. I know the national stuff's really alluring, and
Yeah.
but
Not to me.
I'm way more interested in the local stuff.
You're much
So,
more likely to get a beer with someone local,
Yeah.
right?
That's true.
and I just feel like those, that stuff affects our lives a lot more.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to
Yeah.
do it. But yeah, your ballots are, you'll probably have it by this point. But like the order came out, and it was just kind of controversial and interesting, and and you are basically at the bottom or
I'm at the bottom.
at the
Yeah.
bottom. Yeah.
It feels karmic. In school, I do all my tests backwards. I don't know why.
Oh, do
Uh,
you? You go from the
yeah.
bottom up? Yeah.
Bottom up.
Okay.
It's just what I like to do.
That's
I
kind of
don't know.
cool. Yeah.
It threw you off. It made you think about the questions more specifically. I don't know, some technique I picked up somewhere. But yeah, last place. The Secretary of State I'm pretty sure that the Secretary of State literally does just write letters on balls and then pulls them out.
It's like a bingo
Yeah.
game or something. Yeah.
And so it's the ballot order for the whole state. Like
Okay.
some states you have it shuffled per neighborhood, but here it's easier to just print it all at once.
You kind of answered my question, too. I asked a couple other candidates this, if that happens at the state level or the county level, and it sounds like it's the Secretary of State, probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same order by last name alphabetically for presidential,
Okay.
legislative,
Same
everything.
process.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, if you're interested in Daniel, and by the way, with the anniversary thing and all that, just go back and watch his first episode if you want to learn more about Daniel. And if you're interested in voting for him, look at the bottom of that long list of candidates.
It's a good place to
It
start.
does kind of make it easy to find it, I guess, in some ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel good about it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you
Like,
do, because
lucky.
you could have had a different reaction.
I agree with Daniel though, mixed up.
Yeah.
Like somewhere and especially not squarely in the middle, that would be tougher.
Yeah, in the middle seems tough. Yeah. And what do you generally like if you're knocking on doors or calling people? What do you tell people advice for ranking candidates? Like, how do you?
Yeah, I mean, the less candidates you rank, the less likely that your ballot will help someone get elected,
Okay.
right? So whenever you're ranking someone, you're saying, I am willing to have my ballot be moved to that person. Should either that first person either not need the ballot or should they be eliminated, right? So the more that your first place candidate is either someone who is extremely viable or extremely not viable, the more important it is for you to rank
Hmm.
further down,
Okay.
right? Because if they're extremely viable, if they get 50% in that first round, then yeah, a lot of your ballot's going to go on to that second place. If they get eliminated in that first round or some of
That's
those early
interesting.
rounds, then yeah, your ballot is going to move on to your second or third
But it
place.
also involves a lot of staring into a crystal ball, which I mean, I might think my number one's extremely viable, but maybe he's not.
Yeah, I have no idea, especially with the council races. As far as I'm aware, nobody's done any polling. It's
That's
so
No.
true. Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
And we're
And with that many candidates, it would be extremely expensive. Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
part of the chatter class. Like, let's be honest. Like, we're not really, the three of us are not exactly just the average, voter
Yeah.
thumbing through the phone book size.
We are in the weeds a little bit. Is that what you mean? Like
Maybe a lot.
yeah, when I ask people what district they're in and they have no idea, that's what I feel
Yeah.
like is like, okay, we're kind of ahead of the game, so to speak, I guess.
Maybe two ahead. I don't know. That's what worries me. But does that worry you at all? If that you think that maybe your um suppositions or your assumptions about whether you're number one, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming it's you, whether you're, I guess number two, I guess in your case is extremely viable. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, do I worry about the electorate kind of approaching the ballot?
Mm-hmm.
Like, a little bit, yeah. I mean,
Because that's what this strategy relies on, right? That
yeah.
everybody agrees with you
Well,
that your number two would be extremely viable. So you'll move on to your number three or four, maybe.
I mean, potentially. Like, I guess what worries me is I see some advice out there that is more applicable to ranked choice voting
What is
than,
that
like,
specifically?
um, thinking that you should vote strategically for your first choice. Like, that you should rank your first choice not as the person you actually do most prefer, but as someone else for
Okay,
whatever reason. That's
that
not true.
seems to run squarely counter to what
and
James
Yeah.
Eccles and Tim Scott
yeah,
from
and
the
you're
County of
Yeah.
City
saying
told us.
in like single winner
In
rank
single winner,
choice.
there might be a reason you do that,
Yeah.
but
Don't try to game it.
don't try to game it. Actually do like rank them by preference. The
Right.
only the only the only thing I want to throw out as a consideration is if your first choice is extremely viable and they're in a particular lane, right? Like if you're going to vote pretty moderately, if you're going to vote progressively, if your first choice is extremely viable, my kind of crazy recommendation is consider in your second pick choosing your preference from the other ideological camp.
Or a different
Oh
lane of
my God.
some kind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
That
and
seems
maybe
to run counter to the advice from the city and the county.
well, as I say,
Yeah.
maybe not even ideologically, but even if somebody just have a different policy focus or anything like that that differentiates them, is that kind of what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Or like if you because as far as I see it, every district you're going to have at least one moderate and one progressive, and the real competition is what kind of person is that, and then what kind of person is that other seat going to be.
It
Right,
sounds like
right.
you're gaming ranked choice voting right
A
now.
little bit. All I'm saying is that if your first choice is extremely viable and you do have a preference within the other camp, then consider using that second place to pick that preference.
Because that vote will have more uh, mileage
I
or
won't be
something.
doing that.
Like
Yeah.
if you split it. That's my
Yeah. No,
only
I
yeah.
like it. Yeah.
If your first choice is not extremely viable, if you're worried about them all at all, don't do that.
Right.
I
Yeah.
like it.
Are you persuaded by that at all? Are you gonna
Um.
look into a different
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I feel like in District 3, there's enough choices for me that I could do that if I wanted to.
Oh, for sure.
But I sort of have my rankings figured out more or less.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel lucky to have some good options in District 3.
It's
Yeah.
it's interesting how I mean, Daniel, when you first came in here, I guess it was almost a year ago, I was worried about District 3.
Yeah.
And Andy and I were talking about it because you're in District 3.
Yep.
And we were talking about how there may be just this real vacuum.
Yeah.
I guess, that said, with the voting, if you're convinced that anyone is extremely viable, I would love to see the evidence, because
Right.
it's anyone's game here. I have
I
no
agree.
idea.
That's
yeah.
why I.
And I'm not saying who this is, but I've had candidates in here even recently who are just like, I have no idea, and they have good momentum, but like you're saying, we have no polling on this stuff. It's just really up
And
in the air. And
that 25% threshold is weird. Like, we could
yeah.
get, like in 3, it's very possible that in that first round you get 3 progressive candidates who get 20, 20, 20, and then 1 moderate who gets 25. Like,
Yeah, see, I've never even thought about that. Like, it's just there's so many possibilities.
yeah.
And of course, you don't need to get, we know now from the city and the county, you don't need to get, there's no minimum threshold.
There's no actual
Oh,
number, but you need the percentage. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
according to the math, sure. But
And
I mean, they're just going to press that button, and somebody with 1 vote could get the 3rd slot.
Yeah, it's really unlikely, and it's less likely the more that people fill out 6 slots.
But we have no idea what's going to, I mean, this is
No idea.
all supposing all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And so what we do know is that there's 3 slots and they're going to get filled no matter what. And that button's just going to keep getting pushed until those 3 slots are filled with the software that they are using.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna say I'm really interested after talking to the county and the city guys too, how, because of my background, how the news, how the local news are going to cover it, because I think they're going to be
Me
really
too.
confused and trying to declare winners. I mean, they always do that anyway, but
Yeah.
I think they're going to have a lot more challenges with, figuring out who's winning. And I do think it might take a lot longer, despite what those guys said to us. Maybe a little
I
bit
do
longer than
too.
normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, that week after election day is gonna be nail biting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there may be a lot of wrong calls.
Yeah, and that's, I don't know, for us people who love local politics, like we were talking about, I'll be interested to see like the election parties happening too, because I think people will be waiting, and they might
Yeah.
have to wait days until they
know.
really know. But yeah, it's all interesting to me, and yeah, I wanted to ask you, moving off of that to this other, I'm framing you as the if you get elected, the joint office guy, because
Sure.
you know so much about the joint office, and you're still on the.
Still in the Joint Office Community Budget Advisory Committee.
Okay.
Wow.
Is that the new name?
Joint Office of Homeless Services Community Budget Advisory Committee.
Or I guess
No,
that'll be part of the new.
we retained. They were going to abolish us, and we
Okay,
got
okay.
them to not do that.
That's
So,
great. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
joint office was going to abolish
Yeah, you remember?
Yeah.
its budget advisory committee.
Yeah, they were gonna have one
Yeah,
of.
but I guess I just assumed they weren't really going to go for it.
Yeah. So the context is, right, we to continue the joint office contract, they set up the Homelessness Response Action Plan, which is this big PDF with a bunch of goals in it. And that plan has 3 bodies within it. One of them is made up of elected officials. One of them is the community advisory subcommittee that they're going to appoint a bunch of people to. And the original proposal would have that committee assume our responsibilities.
So they'd take over if that would have happened, which it didn't. But
Which it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, finally at the last minute.
Advising themselves.
Advising. Yeah, I mean, it is. They still would be bringing in people from the outside, but with a different.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
They're picking, right?
They're picking. Yeah.
But that's not you all.
No.
You all are selected by.
I mean, they had us apply. The Office of Community
Right.
Involvement had us
Is it like Civic Life?
interview, and then yeah.
Dan Ryan's office.
Well, this is at the county, right?
Okay, sure. Multnomah County, right? Okay.
And yeah,
That's
we
true.
applied. They
Joint
bring us
office.
in. Then they put us on these committees. Or they wanted to put me on the technology.
So city had
committee.
nothing. I remember that. City had nothing to do with you all's appointments.
Yes.
It was just county.
Yeah, and I suggest, I like, you can go find the testimony to the city. I said, if you are going to abolish us, I suggest you don't do that. But if you are, like, you need to make sure that you get some of the picks on this
Right.
committee if it's a joint office, right?
Mm,
And
yeah.
they, they haven't done it. I mean, back in the day when we built a bridge here, like whenever we built a bridge, we would assemble a grand jury whose job was just to make sure that corruption didn't happen,
Hmm.
right? Like, frankly,
In building a literal bridge.
building a literal
Right.
bridge, yeah,
That's
yeah,
why I
yeah.
love Daniel. He pulls out something like this.
Like,
I never knew this. Yeah.
I know.
it's like you don't have to go far away to find good ideas. Just go back and read the books from here. But like we're spending $400 million this year. I wouldn't mind having a grand jury take a look at that just
Yeah.
to make sure that there wasn't anything bad, right?
Yeah, the joint office budget is $400 million
Yeah.
that you're looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, $70,000 for every person on the street. And that's why we went to them and said, look, if you can't commit and say that at the end of this plan, there'll be at least one fewer people sleeping on the street.
Just one.
Like, I don't know what we're doing here.
But
right?
they couldn't do it.
They couldn't do it. Now, I understand why they couldn't do it, right? They're worried about inflow. They
One person, though?
one person.
You understand why they couldn't say yes to that?
Well, because they made I can understand why. I don't agree with it, right?
Okay.
That's something really important to me.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the distinction. I'm
Like,
interested in hearing
they're saying that they don't have a system in place to measure inflow, like people becoming homeless.
that. Okay.
Now, that seems like something we should be ringing an alarm bell around because that
course.
seems really like a really important number that we've been paying hundreds of millions of dollars every year for and still don't have. They can measure outflow, right? They can measure people going to shelter and then going on to housing.
Right.
And so
But they don't seem to be doing that accurately either.
Right. And so I think overall, they're saying we can make these commitments to outflow, but not inflow. Meanwhile, they're spending a lot of money on things that they claim prevent homelessness.
Mhm.
But how can you know whether you're preventing homelessness if
you're
you
not
can't
measuring
measure
metrics.
the people coming out in homelessness, right? Like,
Kind of the key metric.
But why can't so was the question whether people becoming homeless can get into housing, or wasn't the question just one homeless person into housing?
I
Because
mean,
who cares about inflow if
the question was like, at the end of the year, can you commit and say that there will be at least one fewer people on the street, like unsheltered, right? Like, I get, this getting someone from
you're saying they don't even know how many they don't even know who they're sheltering are actually unsheltered, so they wouldn't be able to measure that metric?
they think that they can't model how many newly people will be unsheltered. And so even if they bring in more people who are unsheltered, if there are more people who are becoming unsheltered, then they can't make it's like in the same way that you can keep like bailing water out of
I
a
see.
sinking
Yeah.
ship.
Because the question was one fewer.
It'll offset.
That was the question.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
question should have been, can you commit to housing one person?
I mean, they do house one person, right? They claim to have housed
43 or
like
something.
a large number.
I don't know. Was it large? I seem
It was
remember
several
it was,
hundred or something.
They had, Housing Multnomah now said like 311. They say that they have some 5,000 number that
but then the
I'm less.
auditor looked at it, right? And they were like, we actually can't tell from any of this. Can you go back
Yeah.
and let us know?
When
Like,
it's confusing too, because like you're both saying, like there's people getting into literal housing, and then there's people getting to shelter.
That too.
Right.
Different.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that we still have no commitment or model as to when we can
Right.
expect unsheltered homelessness to decline, right?
Mhm.
Like, we asked them very directly, okay, we're spending $400 million this year. How much more money would you need in order to begin reducing the amount of people who are unsheltered? Or alternatively, with the same amount of money, how much more time will it take?
Right.
No modeling, right? No understanding.
And that's a pretty flexible ask, right? Time and money.
Time or
Like,
money.
How much do
yeah.
you need to?
Like, if we're really treading water here, then what do you need so that we're not treading water? And if you don't know that,
and
then
they said more money.
Is that what they said? I don't
they
know.
said they have no idea, right?
Right.
They have no idea how much
It was
more
a
money
joke.
they would need. Like,
yeah, but probably more money. They just don't know how much.
and I don't think that really is the problem, right? I don't think
Clearly
more money is
not.
the problem. Like, it's not.
Yeah, because they can't even spend what they have currently, right? According.
Yeah, like they've gotten better at getting money out the door, but like I'm not sure that that's really the metric that's important, right?
Right.
Like, the metric that's important is how many fewer people are sleeping on the street,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, if we're getting more money out there, that's great, but like when I come home from the grocery store, I don't tell my partner that I bought $100 worth of groceries, I tell my
Right.
partner what I bought, right?
Yeah.
And right now we don't get a list of what we bought at the grocery store, and we're
Shout out to
spending the money.
Morrissey.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we are shopping at Whole Foods when we should be shopping at Winco. That's the way I like to think about it.
And like you said, you're coming back saying, "Hey, we just spent $500 on stuff," and everyone's like, "What does that
What do we
matter?"
get? Yeah.
And how many people are you trying to feed and all this stuff?
Yeah, yeah. Because like the truth is, we probably don't have enough money right now to get to 0 people living in shelter and 0 people living unsheltered. We probably don't have the money to do that
Why?
because that would likely involve getting so many people into permanent supportive housing where they have consistent services located on site.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about getting to,
Why do
to
we
zero.
need to do that though? Why couldn't we do like the kind of thing that the San Diego Mayor Kevin Falconer did where you reconnect people with their communities and you help them get back there
That would be
to
it.
an aunt in Tennessee or wherever?
I think that's the right model, right? Like, uh, from how we're spending the money today, like if we're going
Right.
to add that stuff
I
on,
see
right,
what
we'd
you're
have to cut
saying.
other things to do that. And definitely the city on its own couldn't do that, right? The reason I
Right.
focus on the sheltering part is because the city every year in that money we're handing over to the joint office could otherwise buy the pod shelters, the nicest kind of shelter, get them bought and installed. Every year, the money we're handing to the joint office could otherwise build shelter for 25 to 50% of the people who are currently unsheltered.
So it kind of solved the rapid shelter piece of that.
But
Yeah.
we have extra, the city has extra money that it uses on these like Clinton Triangle and these enormous contracts
Yeah.
for like
kinda
that
what he's talking about,
security
yeah.
company, right? And
Yeah.
so, I mean, it's a lot of money floating around. It's all that money. It's the joint office money. I mean, the city actually is spending a lot.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I was going with this is like because you,
And that's just the city.
like we just talked about, you know so much about this stuff and you're the joint office guy. If you're elected, I think you'll be seen as that. Like, how do you agree with this conditioning and also conditioning the joint office with their agreement? And I was also going to ask you to like explain that to people, the agreement status now
Yeah.
that we're in.
So we entered into the agreement to set up this homelessness response action plan. They're calling the homelessness response system. I don't really understand where it lives, but it's this assemblage of different departments working together across the city and county. Uh, we, in order to get the city to sign on, in order to get that through the council, said, okay, there's this set of metrics that we're going to check in with you on October 15th. And I was on a forum the other day and someone was pointing out, yeah, it's like some political maneuvering. They pick the date that ballots drop to check in on the joint office. And that is true. They did that. But from what I can tell, talking with people working at City Hall, it wouldn't have gone through without that October 15th idea, right? So if you think we should stay with the joint office, then you should support this set of metrics because otherwise we would have left. In fact, due to some confusion around the deadlines for getting the agreement passed, we did technically leave the joint office for like a week.
Like a brief.
I mean,
yeah.
in my opinion, we should.
Yeah, I mean,
There's no question here.
I would agree. I don't think we're seeing those commitments to the long-term goals that we should expect. The fact that we got it through and we have this set of things we're going to check in on, I think that at least is a step in the right direction. On the other hand, if they fail to meet those in a substantial way, then we should leave, right? Because that's what holding government accountable means. If they fail to meet on something they agreed to, why would you continue trusting them on that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe I'm extreme on this, but I think conditioning is like the least we can do after years of unaccountable stuff.
No, it's just we're out.
Yeah.
And then when we can resume.
I know some people feel like that, we should just disconnect that agreement completely or, not even have it.
What do you think? What would you do?
So
You're running for city council.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking, basically. Yeah.
So we have the supportive housing services measure, right? Voters
The
passed it.
homelessness tax.
The homelessness
And that's
tax.
Metro.
That's Metro.
Yeah.
The city collects it, hands it to Metro. Metro hands it to the county. It's a mess. Everyone gets their hand on the pot. That was set up as a 10-year measure, right?
Yeah.
Why was it set up as a 10-year measure?
That's a good question. Is that the 10-year plan, homelessness plan?
No, they
Or was it
they
just,
just, it's a tax measure. They gave it a 10-year timeline, right? Uh, I think there is an understanding from voters that homelessness is a problem that we should be approaching urgently,
mm,
right?
Yes.
And so, frankly, it is kind of insane to think that we couldn't fix it over 10 years.
yeah, it's a long time.
January 1st, we're halfway through.
That thing should be renewed. It should be looked at, and voters should decide whether to renew every year, in
Well,
my
and
opinion.
ironically, I think Metro was trying to alter it and extend it a little bit.
Yeah.
I think because they saw that Washington and Clackamas are good stewards with their money in a way that
I think they just want more money.
Washington
But
Clackamas.
no, Metro.
Well,
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sure Metro wants more money,
And
but
they,
I mean that's
yeah.
not a question to me. But
Yeah.
they must have read I mean, these people must have read the polls, sort of like the legislature with Measure 110. And I wonder if maybe they didn't. I wonder if they probably saw what Washington Clackamas were doing and then just felt like, well, we're really gonna look bad now if we
Mm.
don't turn to Multnomah and Jessica Vega Peterson and ask what the heck is going on over there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
What, you know this better than I do.
I mean, from what I understand, they're fiddling with the funding of the measure or how the measure is constructed potentially next year because they want to be able to divert some of the funds to housing construction.
Permanent housing, yeah.
Oh God, are you serious?
I think
Yeah,
that's what they said.
it's
yeah.
something they're discussing. I think part of the reason for that is because they also want to extend the timeline for it, right? Which I don't think is appropriate because again, the sheltering part is simple. The sheltering part is easy. The drug addiction and mental health, that's more complicated.
Mm,
Yeah.
The state should really step in on that.
yeah.
Not a
And it is,
housing
in the shelter
problem.
part is way more simple also than long-term housing. Like that takes way longer to
Yeah. And
do that stuff.
I think functionally the reason I feel this way is like those units of pod shelter. $20,000 for just the pod, $40,000 installed with all the other facilities you want on site, right? Laundry, showers, and so on. So $40,000. When we built housing through the Portland Housing Bond, those units, the studios came in at like $400,000 a pop,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So for every studio we build, yeah, we're housing someone, which is better.
400,000.
But we could have otherwise sheltered 10.
Right.
400,000
The same
for a
price.
studio.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's more money than some people. And housing in Portland is expensive than some people are spending on housing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean it's twice the cost of what a studio is on the private market right now, right?
Mhm.
Like next time if we're going to do a housing bond, it might make more sense to buy housing that's out there and keep it affordable than it would be to build new affordable housing just because we're really bad at it. All I mean to say is I am 100% unwilling to go to someone who's living in a tent and say, we don't have shelter for you because we would rather house a smaller number of people than shelter you today.
Mhm, mhm.
Like that's the truth. That's just kind of the fundamental thing here is every time we make a decision to do something nice for a fewer number of people, we are excluding a greater number of people from the bare necessities.
Do you think that we should do a, as Michael Schellenberger calls it, shelter first housing earn policy, where we say we're going to shelter everybody and commit to sheltering everybody, and then let's triage everybody, figure out what their issues are, and then provide them with wraparound services to the extent those services are utilized, and you're working a program or you're taking your medication or you're seeing your psychiatrist or whatever it is to help you manage your life so you're no longer sleeping on a sidewalk. And so that when we put you in one of these $400,000 studios, you don't die
Right.
of a fentanyl overdose, because we know most people die indoors. We know that. That's a difficult statistic for people to grapple with because their minds kind of explode and they're like, so are we supposed to keep them outdoors to monitor them? And it's more complicated, obviously. But I guess the question is, what do you think of that shelter first housing earned strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I 100% agree. And the reason why is that I want to do what we can here locally, right?
Yes.
Like, if the federal government wanted to step in and build a bunch of apartments at any
More power
price,
to them.
great. Yeah, right? Like, that's what we did in 41. We built 18,000 units in 110 days, sheltering 40,000 people out.
1941
Yeah, it was
during the Great
Vanport,
Depression. Or oh, okay.
right? Like,
Yeah, sure.
Vanport,
Yeah.
if we had Vanport today, we would have, a lot more cheap housing available on the market. And we don't. We never rebuilt it. We just have people race around the old streets. Uh, like, if the federal government wanted to come in and house everybody, that'd be great. But right now, locally, we need to build at least 5,000 units every year to maintain current housing market affordability. And that's a much less than we were able to build through that last housing bond. And that those buildings were built over a period of a couple of years, right? Like, the housing thing, it's something where if there was a lot of resources available, getting people into housing first might be useful, but there aren't those resources. Like, we don't have all that housing.
Would it be useful for people on fentanyl though, do you think? I don't know that it would be.
I don't know, but I don't know. It's like it's hard. It'd be hard to look
You're
a gift
saying
horse in the
you
mouth,
you could use, yeah, I see exactly what you're
right?
saying, which is you could go ahead and use all those housing units as shelter.
Yeah,
That's their shelter now because we have
right.
so gosh darn many.
Yeah,
We can throw them all into every single
Mhm.
one of these units.
but we don't
And I see
have that.
exactly what you're saying, and
It's
so we don't have that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
he's pointing out just more the supply of like, if we if we had an unlimited supply of actual homes, sure,
Which
we could hand
nobody
them
we'd lock
out.
has.
people in there
There
right
isn't a
now,
single city that
but that's
has
Yeah.
that.
yeah.
I mean, even Detroit, you lost a bunch of homes, and now they're starting to realize, starting to run against the supply issue, right?
Yeah.
Because
Mhm. Yeah.
they went and demolished them, right? Like,
And it's a nation, and I don't know, I talk about housing a little bit on this, but it is a nationwide issue of supply.
yeah,
A lot of people don't know this, but we are in a housing recession right now, despite
right.
the rest of the economy. But like what you're saying makes sense to me of just triaging, this is what we can do
This
now.
is what we can
This
do
is what we
now.
have the ability to do to get people off the streets.
Yeah, yeah. Because, like, I remember being in college and eating rice and beans like
Right,
4 nights
right.
a week,
Yeah,
right?
Mm.
of course.
Like,
Ramen.
yeah, yeah, and
If you were lucky enough to have a microwave.
yeah, and that's because you just need calories, right?
Yep.
Like, you are not thinking in that moment, how can I make sure to get all my vitamins and nutrients? You're just like, I need calories, right?
Mhm.
Like, a shelter and a pod shelter is like the ramen noodles of housing,
Right.
right? It's like the cheap thing that we can do to make sure that people don't starve
Sustenance. Yeah.
while we work to handle the other parts, right? And right now, I think our approach is not allowing us to feed people in this way, right? Because we're spending a lot of money on things
That's
that,
for sure true. I mean,
like,
we know we don't have enough. We know we don't have enough
yeah. I mean,
shelter.
I was at a something where they're trying to educate us on homelessness policy the other day, and they were talking about there being 6,000 vacant units, and we have 4,000 people who are unsheltered. So why don't we just rent the units for them? But also, on the other hand, that the number one way to predict overall homelessness is that vacancy rate and the median rent. And so I'm thinking, okay, wait. So if you rented all these units to these people, the vacancy rate would go down, right? And so people providing housing on the housing market are going to say, okay, the vacancy rate's down. I'm going to rent my units at a higher rate. I'm going to increase my rent, right?
Mhm.
So in the end, some of these policies where we're paying for people's rent because it is reducing the supply available, particularly at that lower end of the
Yeah.
market, and driving up rents
Yeah.
might actually increase homelessness. Even though you're housing a particular person, if it increases the rent to the point where someone else becomes homeless,
Right. It's kind
then
of a cannibalistic situation. I don't know.
yeah, and all you're doing is making sure that more providers are getting their hands on more money that then gets directed out to more property owners.
Isn't part of the problem that I mean, one of the biggest problems that we don't even know how many shelters we actually need? Because, like you said, Daniel, we're not
Mhm.
tracking the amount of homeless people, whether street homeless or just not in permanent housing, how many there are at any given time in any credible way.
Yeah, I mean they do the the point in time count in
Which is a
January.
self-report. To the
Self-report.
extent they can get somebody conscious enough to say something,
Yeah.
let alone the truth.
I mean, I work with that number because it's the best number that I have.
That's what everybody works with. It's all we have.
I've been trying to say for a year, there is a group that knows exactly how many homeless people are and where they live. It's the uh, cell phone advertising companies,
Oh.
right? Like they know. I mean, anyone who's running for office knows this because you go and buy ads and you can target based on zip code, right? And these companies know where people live based on them connecting to the same Wi-Fi at home every day with the same device ID, right?
I was
And
wondering, how do you? I thought maybe you meant address, but you're okay. Wi-Fi,
like, yeah,
Wi-Fi connection.
Wi-Fi connection, you can tell location over time. I mean,
Right.
this is how we have the foot traffic numbers downtown.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right in the. I mean, if anyone has data on this stuff, it's the tech companies.
It's the tech companies, right?
Like, yeah.
Like they could,
Yeah.
we could
There's
just,
a
They
mine of
have all
data.
of our,
Yeah.
all
yeah,
of our data right now.
like we could
Yeah.
probably go buy the data on the regular and try to use that to figure out how many people are homeless or at least unsheltered, right? That's just my
Because
pitch.
they're pinging off towers all the time, and they're not pinging off a IP address with the same IP address every night, or at least
Yeah.
once a day.
Or like, okay, they're, doing this at a shelter or at a
Yeah.
library, right? Like it's not,
The geolocation and all that.
yeah, like you shouldn't be able to do this,
Right.
but
That's
The
interesting.
the data's all there.
it's there.
Yeah.
Like if it's there, we should take a look at it at least. All I mean to say is the point in time count is the number that I use because I don't have a better number, and the numbers are pretty easy, right? It's like we have about 6,000
Right.
sheltered and unsheltered. 2,000 ish of those are sheltered. 4,000 ish are unsheltered, and that's January. I think the numbers would be different if you did it in July.
They would be, yes.
Used to live in Old Town. The population is very different in July, but that's the unsheltered population is different in July.
Yeah.
There's very few people who come here migratorily up and down during the summer and then stay in a shelter. They're here to camp. I would like to see us build that capacity to get to 6,000 shelter units so that we can say unequivocally there is room for everybody. And then anybody who's left over, it's like, okay, obviously we need to bring you to a bed. And if we can bring everyone to a bed and there's still more people in beds, then we need to build more beds, right? Like only once we get to that 100% capacity in the point in time count will we know whether it's accurate. Because if there are still people who are out there who are unsheltered and we bring them to a place that has beds and there's no beds left, then we know that we have too many people.
But if we change our strategy, and if part of our strategy is doing things like reconnecting people with their community, that decreases, in my opinion, significantly. Or if, say, if we have a deflection center.
Yeah.
If we have enough police to enforce the recriminalization of drugs. I mean, there are ways in which we can shrink that population, that unsheltered population.
Yeah.
Pretty, in my opinion, dramatically.
Absolutely. I mean, from what I understand, once you get to a place where like shelter is the only option, you're going to lose at least a third to a half of the unsheltered population who are going to find housing through some other way, or they're going to leave, or something else is going to happen, right? Like that's just from what I understand, looking at how other cities have taken a look at this. I would like to have bought and set up too much shelter.
Yeah. It's an easier problem to deal with than, because I was just thinking like, because then you're just left with the people that for whatever reason don't want to join that shelter.
Yeah.
Which is, a part of that population.
Isn't it most people? Yeah. I mean, when they ask people, hey, I mean, when Sam Adams was in here, he said he was part of, I mean, they call them sweeps. I wouldn't call them that. They have to post when they're removing people from the street and garbage and everything. They have to post it. And then there's a time period. And then even then when they come, there's more time. And so, I mean, it's a fair amount of process. What we can get into whether that's rational later, but that's our process.
Right.
It's pretty lenient in my opinion. And I think Sam Adams was saying, like, by the time they get to the point where they're talking to people and asking them, hey, or telling them, hey, we have a place for you to go. Will you go there? Most people say no.
Yeah.
That's all I was thinking about when you were talking about that. Is like, yeah, what about the service resistant population? But I mean, that's like the toughest part of this whole thing, I think, you know.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, I was at a panel the other day that some group set up where they had people who are homeless or recently formerly homeless
Right.
talk,
I
right?
saw pictures of that.
Yeah. And uh, maybe I think I walked away with maybe a different uh, set of knowledge or learnings than some other people who attended. But there's a lot of confusion around that process, right? A
Yes.
lot of people who seem to
Yeah.
not understand the 72-hour note. Like a lot of people not seeming to understand. Um, someone was talking about being given a tiny home and then it being removed by Peabody because it was on the sidewalk, and I'm
Oh my
like, okay,
God.
I don't know who gave you a shed to live in. Like, I can see why that's
Like a
better.
private citizen gave them.
I have no idea
Okay.
because he said that the government had given it to him, but I am aware of no program that does that.
See,
Like,
and it's hard. It's
I,
hard when you know that people, and these are my family members. People, it's hard when people whose lives have become unmanageable. It's hard to rely on them as a historian of information
right.
or as part of gathering data, which is
uh,
why you and I are
I
reticent
think
to use the
you're
word
highlighting a
time.
good thing though, is that because I was thinking about this a few minutes ago, that just navigating, we have such a Byzantine
Yeah.
group of systems
Right.
to get even
Yes.
just to get into the shelter.
Yeah.
It's so dumb.
That
Yeah.
seems like something we should triage for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And all I mean to say too is that, I think getting to 100% shelter capacity is going to involve a lot of different kinds of shelter,
Hmm.
right? And the shelter sites that the city has, Clinton Street Triangle, very effective. $220 a day per bed. The Bybee Lakes Hope Center, also very effective, largest shelter in the state of Oregon as of right now. Uh,
Wow.
$36 a day per bed.
Yeah.
The Right to Dream 2 site, which is pretty much independently run by homeless people, only has a budget of like 65 grand. And they have 20 full-time residents and 40 other beds that they bring in people as emergency shelter, right? So $2 a day a bed, right?
That's their budget per year.
Yeah.
That's less than we're spending on
Well,
per
because it
individual at the
is
county.
literally run by homeless
But yeah.
people.
And they get the land for free. Like, I'm sure if you factored that in, it would be a little different, right?
Right.
All I mean to say is, like, some of the people on this panel were people who lived in a particular camp downtown.
Yeah.
And they were complaining that, yeah, they get swept and they go back to the same site, right?
Of
Because
course.
they have this community and they're supporting each other, right?
Mhm.
Like, okay, we have these pods. The reason right now they're expensive to run is because we think that they need to have all these services. But here are people right now who say that they support each other already. They just need a place to be,
Mhm.
right?
Sanctioned site.
Sanctioned site. Yeah. Like, right. Because if we're saying we can't put them in the pods because we don't have the services for them, then why do we allow them right now to live in a community without the services?
Mm.
Right.
Mhm.
Getting them into a pods in a place where they won't be moved, even in not being able to provide the services, is still a step up because now we know where they are, who they are, and eventually we can bring them online and get that trust. Because right now, I
Or
understand not
not.
having that
I mean, it's
trust.
a fentanyl addiction. So
Yeah.
I don't know that there may not be time for a lot of trust.
Yeah.
I mean, that was great with alcohol, even heroin.
Right.
I just don't think the city or the county have wrapped their minds. And Sam talked about this a little bit.
Yeah. I think
I don't think
it
they've
is
wrapped their
important
minds
to.
around fentanyl
I
addiction.
think it is important, and I hate using the word continuum because everyone talks about it all the time. But I think it is an important part of that, building connections and having people in a place where you can do
Of
that.
course.
But like I was saying a second ago, it's just like I feel like we need so much more triangulation and like coordination between these
Yeah, where is
systems.
our
Yeah.
dashboard to show
But
us
yeah,
where
have
all
a
these things
database where we
are?
can
Yeah.
Like
track people.
Jesse Burke has been saying this for so long. Like it's hotel
Yeah,
software.
yeah.
Why can't we do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to. I'm gonna quickly go through these last ones that I'm trying to get through. But I just wanted to finish up on the whole.
The joint office.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole like conditioning thing, like
Yeah.
because you were talking about Metro and the SSA tax,
Yeah.
and
All I'm saying is that
Mm.
if it comes up in the new city council,
yeah,
my requirement for staying in is, okay, we need that commitment towards ending unsheltered homelessness. which has not been a stated.
Right. Pretty much ever.
I mean, it was for the the um, the 10-year plan to end homelessness. That was like 2004 to 2015,
Right. Yeah.
which then later morphed into the joint office. But since then, for the last 9 years, it has not been a stated goal of the city or the county that they want to end unsheltered homelessness.
Yeah. Or even like you're saying, reduced by one
Even one
person.
person,
Yeah.
right? I would like to see a commitment from the county, at least to get that one person. And then, frankly, I think we need a timeline by which we can expect reductions in the number of unsheltered people and get to that 0 by 2030. And if not, then we need a different date,
That's great. Yeah.
right? Because,
If not, then goodbye.
yeah,
We're out.
I mean, because like I said, we have the funds right now to do the sheltering part ourselves. Like the fact that they have 10 times as much funds and can't even begin to reduce it, doing things that in and of themselves might appear important, but aren't having that larger impact towards actually getting people off the street. I just don't understand it, right? Like holding government accountable means saying, okay, you will do this, and when you don't, I will do this. And we set up an agreement by which we said we will continue this partnership if you do X. If they fail to do X and we don't leave, what are we doing?
Right.
That was
It's
my
kind of an
issue
agreement, yeah.
when Keith Wilson came on. He will not condition money.
Yeah, and he did say that, and that was a while ago. I wonder if he would say the same thing now, but he did say that.
He was pretty emphatic.
And that actually goes into my next thing. And I was just thinking this isn't just with homelessness when I'm asking this too, but I'm just curious how you see, especially if you're elected, how the county works with the city and the new mayor
Or doesn't.
because or
It
doesn't.
doesn't.
Because I ask everyone, and I probably
Yeah.
asked you last time you
It
came here,
doesn't.
how do we fix this city county thing?
With a
It's
new
just
with a new
breakdown.
chair,
Yeah. Well,
right? I mean, we can't fix it until we have a new chair.
and we might have some new
Yeah.
members.
We can't fix it.
We may have some new members by
Oh,
the near future here, but
I
yeah.
mean, at a minimum, that legal question around the chair's authority needs to be resolved. I think
Right.
the chair's authority within the county government as it stands is a little bit too much.
yeah, maybe with a bigger majority on council that's interested in questioning the chair's authority, like Vadim, Sam Adams. Maybe we can work around that. Maybe, I mean, Vadim says he's looked at the charter and
Yeah.
he can raise questions and sort of force that issue, and that would be interesting to see. We haven't seen it yet.
And that's
Yeah.
like step one would be
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I
But
think,
new people, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I
So that's this
Knock on
race,
wood.
November 5th.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's
November 5th.
important that people know that there are two people running for county who want accountability.
Yeah, and
Sam
if you're in
Adams
those
and Vadim
districts,
Mazursky.
yeah,
if you're in those districts, check those races out.
yes, that needs to happen. I think, frankly, and I was very glad to see Vadim and Sam talk about this in the City Club forum, that we need to
Yeah.
look at consolidation,
Mhm.
right? Because
Yes.
I don't know what the argument in favor of keeping Multnomah County and Portland government separate is,
Yeah,
right?
I've been thinking about that a lot more as people bring that up of like merge. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, because like last time we tried it, it lost in part because the name of the combined government was too long.
Okay.
They wanted to
Are
call
you
it,
serious?
yeah, they wanted the Consolidated City County of Portland - Multnomah.
Stupid.
That's got a great ring to it. And no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a dumb name. It's a dumb reason though to not.
it's a dumb reason.
it.
It was a dumb name as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I don't know what the better name is, but I mean that's what the history books say, right? Is that's part of the reason people voted it down. But
Why wouldn't you just call it City of Portland, Multnomah County?
I don't know. I mean,
That's what everybody would expect. I mean, if I were moving here, that's what I'd expect it to be called.
yeah, it's like at least I don't know. It doesn't matter. The name is not
doesn't
important,
matter.
right? Like Rose by her name, whatever it is. All I'm saying is last time we voted it down, the city of Portland was like 65% of Multnomah County by population.
Okay. And that's changed.
Now we're 85%.
Yeah.
So 15% of Multnomah County residents don't live in the city of Portland. The way that city-county consolidation works under Oregon law, every person who lives in Multnomah County, who lives in a city that isn't Portland, would get 2 questions on the ballot. One of them being, should the city and county merge? and the second one being, should our city merge in?
Mm.
And if they vote no, then Gresham, if Gresham votes no,
These other cities, yeah.
they stay as a city under the city county of Portland. So they'll still have the independence that they have today. They just will have one relationship with the Multnomah County City of Portland government and not two relationships with the Multnomah County.
Right. I see what you, so
and
that'd
City
be
of Portland.
basically what they're doing today.
I mean, I think the fact that we have a joint office
Yeah.
and everyone says we need to partner more with the county, I think really indicates that there's no reason to keep it separate.
How do we make that? Who gets to vote on that? Is it a ballot measure? What is it?
So it can be done by a ballot measure, by a petition. The petition's really hard.
Yeah, we can't do that. What's next? City council can refer it for a
City
vote.
council or the county commission, either one of them can initiate it
Okay.
by majority. And then that sets up this charter commission to review, to come up with a charter for the combined entity.
Okay.
And then that gets voted on.
Great.
And I could be totally wrong about this, but I think Vadim or somebody said that they would be down to do that.
Yeah,
They both
yeah,
did.
Vadim and Sam.
and Sam
Right.
said
Yeah,
they'd be
please
down.
vote
Which is
Vadim and
interesting.
Sam.
I'm pretty sold on that. I don't
That's
know.
right. Vote
I
Vadim
just
Mazursky,
see
Sam
so much
Adams.
dysfunction with the county that I would. And it's more of a problem too with like everyone I talk to, just normal voters don't understand the role of each, the city or the county. And
I mean, I
merging them would be.
have an opponent who talks often about sanitation. Sanitation is very important. Picking up the trash is important.
Yeah.
Metro's in
That's
charge of
I was gonna
that.
say that's neither
right?
one of those. Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
the
it's like
city or the
people
county.
complain about TriMet. That's
Yeah.
Metro.
It's Metro. Like they're
The other hidden entity.
like
Yeah.
there are little things that the city can do when it comes to transit or whatever. The most important thing, of course, is public safety. Again, I think that's really important. I've had some tough conversations with some people about that in particular.
Like what? What are those conversations? What are those like?
Like I think public transit's great, right? Like I was at a climate forum the other day and I was saying, look, I'm going to take the bus and bike to City Hall 90% of the time. It's not just because I hate parking
Yeah.
downtown, but because
You want to avoid tickets.
I want to avoid tickets.
I know Eli
Yeah.
did something like that too. He said like 3 days a week or something.
Yeah.
3 days a
Eli
week.
did
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Frankly, I like, put this on the record today. If anyone at City Hall, if any of their elected gets to City Hall by bike or bus more than me, I'll buy him dinner.
You got a wager.
Yeah. That's like, I don't know how we'll figure it out, but honor system, if anyone does it more than me, I'll buy him dinner. I think, taking the bus is important, get people feel good taking the bus is important, right?
Yes.
80% of TriMet riders say they felt
Yeah.
uncomfortable on the bus because of someone else's behavior. 40% of present riders feel safe.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I was
Seems
going to bring
high.
that up. I saw that new stat. Yeah,
That
Yeah.
seems high to me.
80%.
Seems high.
So they're saying like regular riders.
Regular riders feel safe. So 60% feel unsafe, but are still taking it.
They have to. Yeah.
They have to, right? And I will have conversations with people who are very pro transit, I think, like myself, and they will talk about other issues that are getting people or preventing people from riding. They'll say, "Well, I feel safe." I'm like, "Okay, but you ride, right? Like if you're trying to get people who don't ride to
Right.
ride,
Trying to convert.
yeah, they are obviously going to have a different set of beliefs and facts than you do."
And most who do ride seem to have a different set of beliefs and facts than
Yeah, even if
whoever this
60%.
individual is.
Yeah, exactly. Only 20% of people who don't ride regularly feel safe, right? So there's all these other things that the city can do even to help TriMet, even though we don't control it, right? Like making sure that the buses can talk with the red lights so that they can get through signals faster, doing lanes, doing other
Points.
kind of
Yeah.
small things, right? But the number one thing that is preventing people from riding is that safety concern. So if you want to get more people to ride, I think the money is best invested in public safety. Like
Yes.
just 3 months ago,
I was going to say you Narcan somebody, right?
yeah, on the 20 coming home, it's 4:55 on a
Daniel.
Thursday, and someone in the front of the bus passes out, Narcan, someone else Narcans him and then leaves. And so I'm on the phone with 911 because he's still passing out, which is something that people should be aware of. Sometimes you have to Narcan someone a couple times because fentanyl is crazy. he passes out. I'm on the phone with 911. I get through after 2.5 minutes, which is pretty good for 911
That's amazing,
nowadays.
Yeah.
actually.
And eventually, firefighters come, but while I'm on the phone, they say, "Do you have Narcan?" And I didn't have Narcan. They say, "Ask the bus driver." The bus driver doesn't have Narcan.
That's what I asked you when you first told me the story, and I'm like, why does TriMet not have Narcan?
Right. There are people passed out
But
on
anyway,
there
I don't want to
literally
interrupt
every
your
day.
story. I'm sorry.
It's a liability thing. I don't know.
Well, it might be.
The bus driver said that the union was negotiating for it right now.
Okay.
911 eventually says, "Ask the rest of the bus for Narcan." And so I yelled at the rest of the bus, and 4 people gave me Narcan.
Wow.
And
Out of how many people were?
it was a packed bus.
Okay.
It was like maybe 30 people,
Yeah.
right? You know, all I'm saying is those people are doing the right thing, right? That's something I really appreciate about Portland is that when something happens, when something fails, a lot of people step up, right? Like I'm really encouraged when I see people go out and pick up litter and do these kind of things to fix things. I'm very glad that 4 people on that bus that day came up and gave me Narcan.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have to.
Yeah, I was just thinking, what if they didn't? I mean, you could have saw somebody die there.
Could have seen somebody died and is traumatic,
Yeah,
right? Like every person on that bus
everyone.
is now someone who's going to go and tell someone else, "I saw someone pass out and have to get rescued by the firefighters today on the bus."
Yeah,
And that is going to discourage another person from taking the bus,
it's a ridership, thing.
right?
Yeah.
And especially, someone who doesn't have to. Like it's 4:55 on a Thursday. These are people coming home from work from downtown. Hearing that story, family with kids, less likely to take the bus. I don't want kids seeing that, right?
No.
Some, telling like my mom to take the bus across town, like probably gonna be less likely to send her on the bus, right?
Yeah.
Like people think, oh, people are worried about safety, they're worried about their own personal safety. No, frankly, I think it's very understandable that someone does not want to be traumatized by seeing someone
Almost die.
or die.
I mean, usually those minutes that ticked away on 911, I mean, yeah, usually that's too long. Everything you've described, it's too long.
Yeah,
It's too
that's what I
long.
was thinking when you
Yeah.
said it took 2
It
minutes.
would
I
have
was
been
like,
death.
that was what would be going through my brain. It's like, is this person gonna die right now? Like, I'm just
Yeah.
waiting, hoping this works.
And the firefighters were there like 8 minutes after the start, which was pretty
Wow,
good.
wow.
They brought the full truck. That's why we need more of the chat program where they send a
Mhm.
smaller van, which can get there quicker.
Community health and treat.
And like assess and treat or something.
Assess and
Yeah, they had
treat.
that
It's
open
kind
house.
of, and I might be rubbing some people the wrong way, but it's kind of the Fire Bureau's version of PSR, right?
Yeah, like PSR, Portland Street responds to mental health emergencies. Chat
is
responds to medical emergencies.
right, like bodily emergencies.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
like stuff that you don't necessarily need
They have EMTs.
an ambulance. They have EMTs.
Right.
But
They can't transport.
they cannot transport
Right.
for some reason
so
that is
dumb.
inscrutable
Yeah.
to me. Like they're both important programs.
Mhm.
Yes.
One's just more acute medical problems, and then
Yeah. They'll also come if someone is like withdrawing and
Okay.
is like not needed to be brought to a hospital, but just needs like a dose of
Medically assisted
bring stuff
treatment or
to them.
something.
yeah. Like they come back and they check in, like it's an important program.
Yes.
It is not, it is not usually the city of Portland's job to do medicine. We gave
Right.
up our health bureau to the county.
There's another huge
another
complaint I have with the
example.
county is that, and I tried to make this clear in Vadim's episode,
Yeah, I think
but
you
it's
did a
just
good
like,
job.
because I said people get confused with city and county. The county is responsible for mental health services and all that stuff. And so, I don't know, I'm just,
Yeah. And I mean, 66% of Portland Street response clients are homeless that we identify, right? It could be higher otherwise. So it's definitely a homeless service.
mhm.
So
I'm sure it's more.
yeah, I mean, 66 of the number we know, right?
Right.
Like all I'm saying is that's a homeless service. Why is it not under the Joint Office of Homeless Services, right?
Yeah.
It's an important program,
Great point.
but
Another good argument for merger between the city and the county.
exactly. Like I don't understand why keeping these programs separate is good. Like
That's not good.
I will listen to a well-reasoned argument for almost anything. And nobody has really been able to give me a good argument for why keeping the county and city government separate would be good. Like if it was already merged, what would be the argument for separating the two?
Yeah, that's a good way to think
Like
about
I
it.
think the status quo bias is getting in the way here.
Especially with homelessness, it seems like in trying to give people services, it seems like institutionalized siloing, and they're just,
Yeah.
the county specifically, I don't know about the city, but there's just so many people digging their heels into that siloing and just saying, let's keep doing this. And the more I talk to people, the more I'm like, yeah, let's do this merger.
Well,
Like,
Yeah.
because look, if you're benefiting from that separation,
or if you create,
or if you
helped
created
create
it,
that, or
yeah,
whatever.
then of course you want to keep it going because you get to operate in the shadows. And if there's some kind of merger, there's more people looking at you. There's more people asking questions of you. You're accountable to
Or
more
maybe your
people.
program's gone at that point or something,
That's
I don't
right.
know. But yeah.
I mean, think of how much less powerful the chair of Multnomah County could be if Multnomah County was merged with the city. And think of what a spotlight would be on the chair of Multnomah County in a way that, like Andy said, you ask the average person about Multnomah County, they don't even know that that's an important,
Yeah.
those are some of the most, in a lot of ways, not that your race isn't important, Daniel, not that mayor isn't important, but oh, wow. I
Yeah.
mean, when we voted on that chair race, I don't think most people realize that that's the most, in my opinion, that's the most powerful person in the city of Portland,
Yeah.
period,
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, I was
See?
just thinking, you probably know this. I know both their budgets are huge, but which one's technically bigger? But they're both like 4
Cities.
billion.
Cities
City's
is
like
bigger.
8 billion.
Oh,
The
8
county's
billion.
like
Okay.
4. The
Gotcha.
state of Oregon's only 16, which is crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
Like to put that into perspective, right? Like
Not that billions of dollars is a small amount, but yeah, they're both pretty big budgets.
Yeah. I mean, like the county and city government budget together is 75% of the state
It's
budget,
almost
right?
the state, yeah.
Like it's very impactful. Now, obviously, a lot of that is
Wow.
non-discretionary. A lot of that just has to be spent in the ways that have been prescribed. But yeah, the chair, because of the independence that you get within the county government.
And the state has to deal with PERS, right?
That's a good question.
I mean, I would think that'd be part of their budget, right?
I
we
mean, if
pay into it
that's
too.
true,
Yeah.
Like
that's part of that's their budget and they're dealing with PERS. I mean, no one that boulder, that anvil that they're under. No wonder.
yeah. I mean, it's like to answer your question about PSR
Mhm.
versus kind of other parts of public safety, right? I think PSR is really important. I think chat is really important. I think having
is.
people
They
respond
are.
quickly is important, right? Like the way that we've allowed the ambulance services to decline, again, the county
Multnomah County.
going through a private contractor is terrifying. I know that our cardiac arrest survival rate went down to
Yeah.
percentage points from 12 to 10, which, relative is a much bigger number, but because of this issue with staffing the ambulances. And so I was just curious, what is like a standard cardiac survival arrest rate for a city? So I'm thinking, okay, let me look at Seattle. Seattle actually, as it turns out, I just picked the city that has the highest cardiac arrest survival rate in the world.
Wow.
46%.
Wow. What? Ours is, what did you say ours is?
Like 10.
10%?
Yeah.
So you have a 1 in 10 chance
Of
surviving.
when treated.
And then Seattle's almost half.
Almost half. Yeah. So like we got to fix this because otherwise at 65, I'm going to bite my tongue, move to Seattle.
Yeah. No, I've told my kids if I don't call an ambulance, call somebody who can get a neighbor, somebody who can get here quickly and just drive me.
Yep. The difference there is they have the fire department be one of the first class ambulance responders.
Yeah.
They have a separate tax also for it, which I think is something you might look at in the long run. But fundamentally, they have publicly run ambulances.
Yeah. I was going to say, I know Isaac McLennan has brought that up on your show. Like
Yeah.
he's kind of in favor of that. Not that he's taking a position, but he was like open to that, of shifting from a private to public ambulance service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think private's kind of the minority these days in the U.S. Like there's not many. There's still a lot of them that do that, but
Yeah. I mean, like just pay whoever picks it up, right? Like
who is the most effective?
Yeah. I mean, I would love for there to be too many ambulances, right? I'd love for there to be too many
Yeah.
firemen, and like I think the police question here too. Like I think you need enough police officers that you can have some of them assigned to walking up and down the street in neighborhoods and talking to people on their
Yeah,
porches.
That's
that
what
visible
frustrates me every
visible
time people
patrolling.
talk about community policing. My brain explodes. I mean, they obviously don't understand that we're like 49th out of 50th in terms of
Yeah.
cities police per capita in the United States.
Yeah.
They must not understand
And
this.
all that stuff's to me connected because if PSR and chat and all this stuff were doing their 100% effective stuff, that alleviates the police to be doing that
That
stuff.
is
Right.
why that's why Aaron Schmautz had that police union ballot measure
Mhm.
that was trying to strengthen PSR. And I don't think there was enough media coverage
Yeah.
about the ways in which the Portland Police Association were trying to strengthen Portland street response.
Yeah.
Like build it up, allow them to transport people,
Yeah.
fund them,
Because they,
make them effective.
Changes that they
Police
Yeah.
want that.
should
yeah.
have.
I mean, it's like, firemen,
Yes.
you want to save lives. Firemen, obviously, some part of it is the fire, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I think they'd like to get back to
they'd
fires.
like to get back to fires, right? Not overdoses day in and day out.
Yeah.
So if someone else can handle the overdoses so that they can be ready for the fires, I think that's important,
Or
right?
if we can knock it off with the overdoses and open up a deflection center
Yeah.
in Multnomah County.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I just feel like they're so connected in it. And the whole goal to me, and maybe it sounds biased, but the whole goal is to get this absence, people describe as an absence of policing when they have an issue,
Yeah.
because those other services and those other providers can handle the overdoses and all the mental health stuff. And then the police can get back to
Yeah.
Yeah.
police and fire can get back to doing
Yeah.
Doing
their
what they
traditional
thought
kind of
they would
roles.
do.
I talk a lot with Kezia about that because she used to work for the fire bureau and
That's right.
police bureau, and she was saying that is a real burnout cause for the fire bureau. Is
Yep.
a lot of these
It
people
is.
didn't
Isaac
necessarily
talked about
sign up
that.
for this, and they feel like they're just going on overdose calls all day, and
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Aaron talked about that with police too. And we've had, well, we've both had guests on our shows who've talked about bad interactions with police, and I have no doubt they had those. But I think it was Aaron who said, it's, yeah. I mean, if you're stretched as thin as Portland Police Bureau is, you're going to have more bad interactions with the community. Like it's good to fund police and make sure we have more police. That's a
Yeah.
good thing. You
Yeah.
want the community to have good interactions with their police force. You want people on foot. You want
Yeah.
community policing. Isn't that what we all want?
Yeah. It's
Good
like,
training. Isn't that what we all demanded in 2020?
to give a funny example, I guess, at least funny to me, right? Like, I think this is almost a year ago. I was with my mom in her car, and we're coming down the Ross Island Bridge, and something goes wrong with it, and the car breaks down in the middle of the left lane,
on the bridge.
just
God.
coming right off the bridge, right?
Okay.
And so we're like fussing with it,
Stressful.
and like eventually someone helps us figure out how to get it back into gear, and then a police officer shows up and kind of directs the traffic using his car to allow us to get across the road, right? And he sees this park, and then he leaves, right? And at the time I was like, okay, this is a little, like, he didn't stop to chat or say anything, introduce
Yeah.
himself, right? Because he had to run right to another call,
Yes.
right? Like, if you want to have people build those relationships, it has to be something that they have the time to do. And if you're always running to things that are more important than that, because I am not here saying that guy shouldn't have gone and responded to an assault and instead spent and like taking the time to talk for a second, right? I'm saying that we need to have enough that
Right.
there's some overage, there's some extra
Yeah.
that can be spent on maintaining and building those relationships,
Yeah.
right?
Because that visibility is really, those positive interactions are huge in building
my gosh.
community. And then, like,
Yeah.
there's probably a lot of people who had your same situation that an officer couldn't respond to because they're just like, I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's an old Seinfeld bit,
Yeah.
right? Where he's like, give him a broom. Right? He's like complaining, like, I see these cops standing around on the subway and, give them a broom, right? Like, well, yeah, because they have enough police who are able to pick up some other things. Whereas here, if I handed a cop a broom, he'd never even get to use it, right? The two people we have assigned to graffiti patrol have to respond to other calls. They end up spending 10% of their time on graffiti.
Mhm.
So we don't even have someone working full time looking at graffiti. It's not the most important thing in the world versus, violent crime.
Same with transit. That's the same thing with transit. They're pulled away.
They're pulled away. And it's like understandable because I want them to respond to the most important thing. But if you want to build those relationships, you have to give them enough time
Right.
to be able to do that. In particular, I'd like to see the city offer a bonus as well for locating within the city and living as a police officer. Yeah.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh, require it." I don't know about that. Let's
I don't know.
let's pay them.
I guess the reason I'm reticent about that, I is because, and I think we could help this if we have more police, and with the recriminalization of drugs, if we had something like a deflection center in Multnomah County.
Yeah.
I think Nathan Vasquez in January is going to be helpful to actually have a system partner. But right now, they need a break.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for them to live here with a family. It
No.
really doesn't. And it's not, I just want to be, my opinion is it's not a good place to raise kids right now.
Yep.
So I think some things need to change. I'm not saying I wouldn't at some point be persuaded by that, but right now, where would they recharge exactly? Or how would that work? I mean,
Yeah.
It's a good point, and
how do you unplug from all
Yeah,
this?
I know people. All the police officers I know never want to live in the city, but I do think that's a good idea to incentivize in some way. Because I do want to shout out Eli, who does
Eli
live in the
does.
city, and I don't know how he deals with it, but
And it's also, like we technically have the highest police officer pay in the state, but it's not true if you factor in the cost of living.
right,
right.
which is
So,
high up here.
Yeah, like, and frankly, I could see us saying it generally for city employees across the board, and you have to look at the fiscal impact.
Yeah.
But say, look, we will give you a cost of living adjustment if you are willing to live within the city limits.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, the other thing that I like is that I think it would help attract more police.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I think people look at, I think people look at those openings from around the country and they just think, why in the hell would I do that?
Yeah.
And then their second line of thinking is, it also sounds expensive. Like I
Yeah.
also wouldn't, and I would net nothing.
Well, I was thinking, I know this people that hate Florida, but I was shout them because they had a statewide law enforcement incentive that was like, I don't know what it was, 5 or 10 grand or something. It's like, if you move to Florida and you're a law enforcement officer, we'll give you this. And
Right.
I don't know. When our staffing levels
Yeah.
are at this point, that's when I'm just like, we got to bust out the
They
bonuses.
also don't
and
pay
Yeah.
property taxes.
Yeah.
Did you
Interesting.
know that?
No.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You're saying law enforcement does?
Yeah,
Oh.
or they get a break on it. But
Okay.
I have a friend who was in law
That'd be a good
enforcement
idea,
here,
yeah.
and he went to Florida, and he sent me this. He had no idea. He sent me this letter that was like, it was either a break or a full waiver, but he said, "Hey, check this out," and I
Yeah.
was like, I've never even heard of that.
And I know
Yeah.
I shouted this out before. I don't think it has a chance of passing, but there's that bill. I forget what it's called. That HERO Act, I think, that was trying to have a zero down payment program for if you're law enforcement, also teachers. I think they had in there. There was
Teachers
a wide,
have a good,
there was a
pretty
wide
good
group, but it was a
program, yeah.
national bill. But I think stuff like that, those kind of incentives
And
are great
veterans
for
and yeah.
for first responders.
Yeah,
And to
absolutely.
be clear, I don't know if this is like a state program. Maybe it is, but
Yeah.
it's definitely, I mean, he's in a more left to moderate county, and it's in that county. And so I don't know why we couldn't have something. I mean, I don't think we'll get the county on board with that, but I like your idea, Daniel, about incentives. Just
Yeah.
pay 'em more money
Just
to
and
live here.
I mean, it's like right now we have 880 positions.
hmm
We have 800 officers, right? So 10% of our positions are already funded or unfilled. A lot of it is that recruitment pipeline. In particular,
right.
it's a lot faster to hire on someone who's already law enforcement somewhere else.
Right, because they don't have to go through that.
Yeah, just bring on a
like
lateral.
they're
But who's going to come in from somewhere else here?
yeah.
Well,
And
we've got to change that culture.
what I will, something that's important to me is making sure that I can understand arguments from people who disagree with me, right?
Right.
So my kind of thing I would say to people who are very skeptical of policing here is that if you do have that selection effect, then aren't you not going to incentivize more officers who are wanting to be gung-ho about the current kind of approach we need, right? Like if you're an officer and you're saying, okay, what I really value is community policing and being able to walk up and down the streets and talk to people and get to know people in the community, Portland is not the place for that right now.
Right. Yeah, definitely
So
not.
if
That's
you're,
Orange County or something.
yeah,
Lake
like
Oswego.
if you're skeptical of it, then if anything, you should support us fixing that hiring issue
Mhm.
so that we can hire broadly.
What do they say to that when you make that argument?
It's not something that we get into a good discussion about.
Yeah.
Because I think the other question too I have is, look, there's no way for the government to ban private security.
Yeah.
And as we've seen the number of officers in Portland decline, we've seen a huge increase in the amount of private security.
Yeah, it's like Brazil. And then they criticize that.
Yeah. And
What are
so,
people supposed to do?
like, I am skeptical of the amount of private security. I would prefer it be public, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think we all
Like,
would,
I'm not saying that we should,
except the companies. But yes, we
yeah.
all would.
Like, I'm not saying,
So would the police.
yeah, because you get oversight. There's no security guard in Portland wears a body cam.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've probably all heard a story of the past few years of a security guard shooting somebody and killing them or injuring them or something. I've heard of at least two. I personally, I
Wow.
don't know a security guy, but a guy I work with knows a guy who killed somebody, and
Yeah.
it's just like
Wow.
they don't have the oversight that you're
They
talking
don't have the
about.
oversight, right? Yeah, and that's my concern is, like, as much as I can understand someone being not a large fan of the police,
Mhm.
if we don't have that public security system, we're going to have a private security system.
And it's only going to be for
And that's
people who
gonna
can
be
afford it.
Yep.
I was gonna say that's like
Yep.
RoboCop. If
It's
you ever seen
literally
RoboCop,
going to be like
no,
South
I'm just
America.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be like Chappie. Yeah.
we'll have
no.
all these company based private security.
Which we do already, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
do.
That's
That vacuum's been filled.
Yeah, and I see things all the time that I'm very sketched out about. I heard the other day that there are some cameras that people have now that they just use to talk to people to imply that there's security there, right? Like,
Mm.
I think
Oh,
over
yeah.
time, the longer we allow kind of disorder to occur and become entrenched, the farther we will stray from being a high trust Portland,
That's
Mhm,
exactly
mhm.
right.
right? Like, I want a Portland where having gates at the Fred Meyer is unnecessary,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I want a Portland where the business owners I talk to downtown will say, right now, they'll say, my windows were smashed only 3 times this year.
Right.
Like, we should never be discounting the fact that your windows got smashed 3 times in a year.
And that was when they took down the plywood and put up new windows. I mean, I don't know about most, but a lot of them just leave it up.
Yeah, which is understandable. And it looks worse, and then things get worse over time, right? Like, you have to look at the situation we're creating. And right now,
Right. We're funding private security and plywood companies.
yeah,
Like, that's where the money is right now.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's just really bad for any kind of business. I don't know. I saw that thing
Yes.
about Willamette Week like a week ago about the St. John's neighborhood, and there's a bunch of businesses that like we're one breaking away from closing all our businesses, and
Yep.
and the common thing that I always hear is they can't get police to show up, and that's what I'm saying. If we
Of course
Yeah.
not.
staff up and also fix these other services so that they alleviate more police, and, they're all
Yeah.
connected, and it's
Yeah.
just
What do you think of the county's election software?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because we were
Yeah.
our last episode, we were
I
dying
like
to know what software
I
they were
like
going
this
to
question.
use.
I like it. Yeah.
So, the actual rank choice part of it is open source.
Right.
Uh,
RC tab.
yeah,
Yeah.
which familiar just means that anyone can look at the code
Yeah.
and the history of it.
Any of us right now could download it.
Yeah, like
Daniel's downloaded it.
I have looked around at it a little bit, not done a full review. I just wanted to see a little bit of it. I was surprised.
Just to remind people, you're a software
Software
by
engineer.
trade. Yes.
I was surprised that they are not. I was surprised that they are rounding. Sorry, this is hard to explain.
He's thinking about the algorithm right now.
Well, okay. What I was surprised about is the way that they're handling the math around fractional votes,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So, to remind everyone, in the single transferable vote system, if, say, you ranked me first and John Walker second for District 3, and you need 25% +1 to win as the threshold for that first thing. Now, it might not happen for the second or third round, but definitely the first round it's 25%, right?
+1.
+1. So if I get 30% of the vote, let's ignore the +1 because it makes the math really hard.
Okay.
If I get 30% of the vote, then I only needed 25% of the vote, then I only need 5/6 of every first place vote I got. So every person who ranked me first, that extra 1/6 goes to their second choice, right?
Gotcha. That's the surplus.
That's the surplus.
Beyond 25%.
Yeah. Yeah. Or that's why it's single transferable vote, because you have one vote and it gets transferred down. You don't have like 3 votes that then get
Right.
apportioned. You have one vote that gets transferred down. Now, anyone who's played around with a calculator in math class knows that 1 divided by 6 is not
It's not even.
It's not even. It's an irrational number. Well, it's not irrational, but
It's one of
it's
those on the
repeating.
calculator
Yeah.
that keeps going. Yeah.
I'm forgetting my exact terminology right now. All I'm saying, yeah, it's what 0.6666, right? Or whatever it is, right? It's a
It's
non-terminating
a
number.
fraction that
You could have other fractions here too, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you could end up with any sort of denominator.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, we're going to truncate it to the 4th decimal point.
Okay. So they're not stopping after 4.
They're stopping after 4.
Yeah. So technically you're lopping off a piece of the vote there.
You could lose 1/1000th of your vote, which is, it's nothing, but it does make the difference between two votes there.
It could be something.
And
Yeah.
you could do it you could have handled it the other way. There's no reason why you couldn't keep them as non-decimal
Right.
fractions and then added them up later doing, fraction summing.
That is interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, because the reason I'm sketched out about this is because the way that computers handle floating point numbers, which are those numbers that are decimals,
Right.
is really weird sometimes. And sometimes you can't quite guess what the outcome will be, even if it's two numbers that you know how they should be added. The outcome can be a little weird.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my only skepticism of it. They did a good job of answering a lot of the other questions. The federal government says that it follows their rules, which is interesting.
Yeah. I wish I had more time to ask Tim about that, because he said it passed, I believe, the state and the federal systems, and I'm curious of what that entails. I don't really know.
I don't know what that entails. Yeah.
But yeah, it just seems like if this kind of math is being not ignored, but that's kind of a slight, in my opinion, of like, we're just throwing away some data from this theoretical vote.
Yeah. I mean,
which doesn't seem.
I mean, honestly, my favorite, well, I had a number of favorite parts of that. Andy, first of all, thank you for putting that together, because you brought in somebody from a city elections analyst, James Eccles, and you brought in Tim Scott from the county elections office. And that was, I think that's a feat.
Yeah.
And it's really important that you did it.
Appreciate it. I
Number
was going
one,
to shout them out too, because I haven't told anybody this, but
it's
after that
amazing.
episode came out, if you watch my intro, those guys clearly did, because they sent me a huge email answering all my questions.
Oh, are
really?
you
Okay,
going to
cool.
read the email?
Maybe at some point, yeah, or I'll post an image of it or something.
That's very
But yeah,
kind
I
of them.
replied to them. I was like, thank you very much. You guys are just, great info providers.
Well, one of my favorite parts was when they were, I felt like, subjectively anyway, the message was, and I think they said it, this is not exotic. This has been done. This is not difficult. And all I kept thinking is, if it wasn't exotic or difficult, we wouldn't have to be sitting here for 2+ hours. If it's the old system, I know how it works.
I think a lot of that
You
is
don't
just
need to
them
tell
trying
me.
to put on a very confident face, because it's got to be intimidating going into election night with this stuff, I would think.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe Tim's just that confident. We'll see.
Like, every piece of it isn't exotic, but you put it together, it's definitely new, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's really important that we see it through, right? Just rule of law,
right?
Reasons why.
Yeah, they seem committed to that.
Yeah.
Which I think is, I don't question. I actually don't question the legitimacy of what they're doing at all.
Right.
At all.
Right.
Not even
Yeah.
close. And I think that was really important to them.
Yeah.
And that was my takeaway was it had nothing to do with legitimacy.
Yeah. I just have a couple more questions, but I did want to say that that's the kind of stuff that I'm more worried about is like, and that's why I was trying to press them on the software stuff is like you get into these really
The
granular
decimals and
details
yeah.
and
Yeah.
people that don't understand software, sometimes they don't even think about that stuff. So it's
No,
like,
of course not.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why it's, important we get some people who understand how a computer works
yeah.
in city
Yeah,
government,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because like there are some weeds here that I think are concerning. I don't know.
It
But
doesn't matter now, but how were you for this charter reform proposal?
I
I mean, obviously it's here, but I'm interested as a software engineer knowing what was probably coming if this what I think in my opinion is an exotic system
yeah,
came forward, knowing what was coming, what was your position on it?
I wish it had been split up
Yes,
That's how
the
I
two
feel.
votes
Yeah.
into
about right, having a city manager and doing geographical districts versus
and
single transferable vote.
yeah.
Yeah.
And having the ranked choice.
Everybody
Yeah.
wanted that.
That
Everybody wanted that.
I would have
But
preferred.
then the single transferable vote system wouldn't have passed, and they needed that to pass, so they put it all together, in my opinion. It stayed as a package, and that's why.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. From all the stuff I've heard, yeah, that there's polling saying that's what people wanted and they didn't listen to that. And
Yeah.
it was a package deal and
but I
that's what we
agree.
have.
I
And
think it should
And
have
we
been
can
split
change
up.
it. I think that
And they kept saying that. Tim and James kept saying that when they came on.
yeah.
If people don't like it, they should change it. City council can refer it. I think a ballot measure is just too difficult and expensive, but city council can refer it if
Yep.
you're hearing from your constituents that, hey, we want it. We don't want this anymore.
Something that's also really important to me, the city council also has the authority to put just questions on the ballot
Yes,
that are
that's exactly
non-binding,
right.
Like I think we need to be using that way more often.
They're just like advisory questions.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of
Ben
like a
West did
poll.
It's a
this.
poll.
Yeah.
He did that in Clackamas
That is
County
Yeah.
smart.
about the decriminalization of drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. He talked about it and I thought, that's really smart. It's a way to get a poll without spending a bunch of money
Yeah.
on a poll
With a
on
company.
a
Yeah.
pollster, but also it's a way to get, I think, a more accurate result.
Yep.
Because when you're going out and polling people,
Yeah.
these are not all people who vote.
Yeah. Those
Yeah.
are registered voters. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Or-
lets you inform, next time if you want to bring something to the ballot, you have that result already in place, right? It also gives you an insight into the precinct level reporting, right? Because doing a poll where you can get granular about where in the city people feel differently about things
That's
Mhm.
hard.
is even more expensive,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? Like
It is.
we're already sending this out, twice every 2 years.
Mhm.
I mean, you could potentially send them out more. Uh, like I think
Why
bringing that
not?
in
Yeah.
is really important. My question, about the changes. Okay, well, how do we want to measure whether it's more effective or not? Like to me, I want government that's effective. The reason why you have power distributed within a government is to reduce its effectiveness, right? Is to make sure
Mhm.
that no particular person has their hand on too much of it and can do
Mhm.
bad things with it, right?
Mhm.
That's why you distribute power.
Mhm.
So
There's a balance
yeah,
somewhere.
because like having one person in charge of the whole city, that person could probably get a lot done, but the likelihood of them doing the right thing is lower, just
Yeah.
across the board,
And maybe, yeah. I was gonna say
right?
likelihood of failure is also higher.
Yeah, like that's the
Yeah.
argument for why we have
Yeah.
democracy, right?
Right.
So
More ideas.
like
Yeah.
when we're looking at this new system, which is trying to do two things, right? It's trying to distribute power, but also concentrate some of it within the city manager.
Mhm.
Uh, what are the metrics that we're going to use to figure out, okay, is this new form of government more effective?
Yeah, that's a great question. What are the metrics?
I
Yeah.
think that
So this polling.
That is a great
Yeah.
question.
I
Yeah.
think that the number one metric is how many people are still unsheltered.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many people are still unsheltered? If we can't begin to get that down within a year, then
But is that a
I think
city
we should look at a
issue?
different. It's uh
Going
not
back to the
necessary.
merger here.
I mean,
Yeah.
there are very few issues that I could say that the city has 100% control of. Maybe your water bill,
P-bot maybe. I
E-bot,
don't know. Yeah, that is
or
hard.
like a
Right.
top level
Nothing
countable
anybody.
metric.
Well, public safety. I mean,
Public safety.
PPB is squarely within the city's purview, and that's
Yeah.
one thing that concerns me about a fair amount of candidates who seem focused on a lot of things that are not or that are supposed to be within the purview of the county or just other places, and who don't seem to be as focused on
Yeah.
police, really,
Yeah.
or fire.
Yeah, I would say that the metrics I'd pull out there are, one, we got to get those 911 call times down to
BOAC.
0.
Yeah, Bureau of Emergency
That
Communications.
one, it really is just a money question, like fundamentally. Just one,
Staffing BOAC and
it's staffing.
yeah.
It's because the attractiveness of a call center job that isn't
Right.
911 went way up
Hmm.
after the pandemic.
Yeah,
A lot of them,
remote. Yeah.
yeah, and the pay went up too.
Yeah,
So why would you take a worse call center job for comparable pay?
that's true. This was like a couple months ago, but I was blown away when somebody was telling me that their call center people are asking for $70,000 a year now, and I was like, "Are you
Yeah.
kidding me for taking calls?"
It's what I
You
mean.
mean
I'm non-BOA. I'm just saying, like,
Are
you're
you
working at
serious?
Comcast or whatever. Yeah, like
They're pulling in $70,000
that's what I
a
heard. I
year?
don't know. That's what they're
It's
asking for.
technical. It's
Yeah,
technical work sometimes, right? Like,
and all of our that I think the median.
You mean like troubleshooting and things?
yeah, stuff like
Uh-huh.
yeah. If you're taking calls to figure
All
out
they
where to
told me is
send,
turn it off and turn it on.
I think the
yeah,
median salary is kind of getting there
Unplug it.
anyway.
Yeah.
Leave it for 3 seconds.
Um,
I mean, the market, right? Like that sets the price for what the labor is, and if
No,
we
you're
can't
right.
attract people, then
It
we need
sets
to
it
increase.
how it sets it.
Yeah, like I think getting that 911 call center time down is something definitely directly into the city purview. Making sure that police response times are down. I think response time is the metric here that's important
yeah.
because the overall crime rate, there are other factors, but the response time is something that we have direct control
Yeah,
over
which means we need more.
more.
A lot more.
Yeah, because we're not going to make them drive faster. Like
Right. Yeah.
you
Or
need more of
run
them.
or
Yeah,
bike,
or
which they
bike. Yeah,
do. They
yeah,
do all of
And
it.
that's the number one thing I hear, even just from people I know, is that like something happened and they either didn't show up or it took 2 hours or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and then you look into it. Like this happened with Mary Constantino when my friend who was assaulted, and
Mm-hmm.
she's an interventional radiologist, and she was concussed. And we looked, so it took 20 minutes and they were gone by then.
yeah,
But Aaron Schmaltz looked into it and talked to some national and international reporters about it. And it was an incredible amount of, there were an incredible amount of pending calls, and they were going from shootings to stabbings
yeah,
to assaults in progress, robbery
yeah.
in progress,
Right.
as opposed to, hey, this happened, they ran away.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. I think yeah, you have to get more staff. That's just fundamentally
Yeah. I like these metrics though that you're
like
providing
I
for the
do
city that
too.
we can actually
because
tackle.
I think that's the important thing is like you know a lot of people will come out and say we need more of X.
Mm-hmm.
Surely there's a reason why we need more of X.
Yeah.
So I'm very willing to take someone's bet that I think they're going to fail on, because then the result shows that it's different, right? Because like I think PSR street response funding it will probably maybe potentially help with getting those police response times down
Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I think they think it will.
because you make it more
That's why they want to
available.
fund it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like I think having these hypotheses about what different policy interventions will do, and then making sure that those policy interventions actually achieve the outcomes we
Yeah.
expected. That's the only way that you can actually have effective government.
Yeah. It's one that even from when you first came on here, that's one thing I think that's a theme of yours is you're focused on outcomes, which is
Yeah,
what I'd like to see
because
more.
I want to be wrong,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like if throwing a bunch of money at shelters results in there being more people here who were just here for shelter, then we know that wasn't the right approach to the problem, and we can
Right.
try something else, right?
Right.
Like I want to be wrong, but being wrong requires you to be willing to take that step
Yeah.
and to take it quickly, because the longer that you spend in committee trying to talk about how to best do something,
Like the fentanyl crisis.
like the fentanyl
Yeah. We have
crisis,
so many examples.
yeah, like
So many examples.
stop talking, do it, and then fail.
Yeah.
Do something and fail so you can try something else.
And
Right.
it's such an important
And acknowledge the failure.
thing
Yeah.
here locally is, and I talk about it with a lot of people coming here, is the ability to change your mind and position on something, because it's like that. Like I always think, I don't know why the ambulance thing, but the county dug their heels in with that before eventually just coming to the conclusion that a lot of people wanted,
Yeah.
which was to go to one paramedic, one EMT. And that whole time, like you're saying, they're in committee or whatever debating this stuff. That's just
Yeah.
lives that were affected, and I don't know.
And I think
It's
that
crazy.
that ambulance um, issue is pretty emblematic of so many of the problems in Portland, right?
Yeah.
Which is like unequivocally having uh, having two better trained professionals in an ambulance is better than having one, highly trained, one slightly less highly trained. I'm forgetting right now which one is better, paramedic or
I
EMT.
can't. I
Not
think
better, but
paramedic.
different,
Yeah.
higher class of standard, whatever it
Yeah.
is. Having two highly trained people in an ambulance is better than having one highly trained person and one slightly less highly trained person, right? Unequivocally. But if it means that you have less ambulances overall,
Yeah. If you're not getting either option.
yeah, then it's not actually better, right? Like I I think too often we're letting the perfect be the enemy of the good,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're saying we would rather house one person than shelter 10.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake. And I'm not willing to tell those 9 people who lose shelter that they're on the street because we house that one person.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not willing to tell someone that the ambulance can't come because we had a particular threshold for staffing that wasn't met.
Right.
Right. Like, if nobody is coming, like, I just want someone to come. Right. Like,
And I think that's how a lot of the people felt is like if you're waiting on an ambulance in that situation, Jessica Baker Peterson is not out there saying, "Hey, it's better. Sorry, it's better if we have 2 paramedics. Like it's not going to come because we want to have 2."
yeah.
Like that's what it seemed like was happening for years.
Yeah.
And
And
so, but yeah, the ability to pay attention and see what's actually going on locally and to adjust your positions is just so critical.
yeah.
What have you changed your mind about since we talked to you about a year ago?
Uh,
If anything.
the Frog Ferry,
Yeah.
if you're familiar.
Was that the ferry people want to see happen?
Yeah, the ferry that would go from St. John's to downtown.
Okay, yeah.
I thought that was a bad idea.
And now you like it.
And now I like it. Uh, because I thought it was a bad idea in terms of public transit. But what convinced me was talking with someone in emergency management who said, "No, this is earthquake
I
preparedness."
could
Yeah.
see that, yeah.
Because we have
There's like one bridge that'll
like the Selwood should be fine, the Tillicum, the bridge will be fine, but the approaches won't.
right.
The Burnside Bridge is going to be like another while until it's
a
fixed, right?
renovation that's coming up, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the Frog Ferry, obviously, you can get across the river without a bridge, and you can go point to point, right? You're not constrained to where the bridges
Mhm.
are. So at least having something like that as, okay, now we're ready. And what really convinced me on that too was I was biking by and I saw the firefighters being ferried across the water to the Ross Island where there was a fire,
Mm,
right? There was that big fire on Ross Island a couple months
yeah, I
ago.
remember that.
And we had a hard time fighting it because we had to get the firefighters across the river, and the firefighters have one boat. We started pulling in other boats. Like, I
Yeah.
think the Portland Spirit helped, if I'm remembering correctly, right? Like, we didn't have enough resources to get these firefighters where they needed to go on the river. Having something like the Frog Ferry that is providing not very good transit service, but is ready to go in case of an emergency, that makes sense to me. Now I support it, right?
Yeah, and it is kind of a double. It's a, that's what I was thinking. How effective it would be as a transit like alleviation, like
Not
because
very,
I know that St. John's the bridge does get pretty backed up. I don't know what the route of the boat would be, but
yeah, like it'd be like Cathedral Park to downtown.
okay,
I mean, like I could imagine you extending it further, right? Even to like,
there's a little more stops along the way or something.
yeah, right.
It seems that for every bridge, we should have at least one of those.
Just at least like the
Just for
landing.
emergency purposes.
Yeah, yeah,
Even if nobody's really using it, somebody will need, I mean, like you said, fire or something. Somebody will need it.
yeah. We got 500,000 people out of Manhattan by boat after 9/11, right? Like
Hmm.
those ferries are there providing somewhat okay
They're
commuter
everywhere
service.
else. I
Yeah,
mean, they're
and
in every functional city.
and I was just thinking we are kind of the river
Why don't we
city,
have
right?
that?
Like,
Yeah,
And
but we're Bridgetown, Andy.
Bridgetown. I'm sorry.
We want to take away from that.
and I think, it'd be maybe it's a silly reason for it, but Portland, we're pretty close to having one of each, right? We have a really weird commuter rail. We have the
Mhm.
light rail. We have the streetcar. We have the tram.
Yeah.
Right.
We have
Right.
the Oregon Municipal Elevator, one of the few
Yeah.
public transit
Talk about
elevators in the
Oregon
country.
City.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like that's
It is
cool.
a cool
It
thing. Yeah.
is cool.
We have the deepest transit station in North America at the
Do we
zoo.
really?
At the
Yeah,
zoo. Yeah. Is
Oh
that the one?
yeah. Okay.
Robertson
Sure.
Tunnel, I
Oh
think.
my
yeah.
gosh. Yeah.
Like we have all these fun things. Throwing a ferry into the mix, it'd be fun.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
And if we're such a transportation city, it
yeah,
seems like
and
it
it's
could
not
be.
very much money, and it's definitely
Can we get a federal grant for that?
yes,
I mean,
and
I don't understand why we'd have to spend our own money on that. It just seems, I mean, it would be our own money, but I think if we had some effective lobbying and leadership
yeah.
nationally, it seems like we should be able to fund that.
Or if
Yeah.
if the public money was used to set up the dock infrastructure
Right.
and different operators
Why
wanted
aren't we
to
doing that?
operate
Yeah.
boats privately, because I could imagine taking the jet boat down from St. John's sometime versus taking the ferry boat, like whatever it is, right? Like
Yeah.
I can,
Whatever it is.
like in New York they have uh apartment developers pay it to build new docks
Mm, that makes
because
sense.
they
Yeah.
want to build apartments along the waterfront in areas that don't have good subway connections. And so they figure, okay, this will help, right? You can do stuff like that. Like all I'm saying is that's something
That's
that
very
changed.
smart.
I changed my mind on over the
Yeah.
course of this because people made a good case to me.
Yeah, it's great.
Like there's very few things. This is something I try to do as like a personal practice. There's very few things that I'm 100% confident about,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I feel the same way.
Like I try to never say like, okay, I'm 100% convinced of this now. I try to say, okay, I was 70% sure of this, now I'm 80% sure, and so on, right? And so there's very few kind of policy areas where I'm like, okay, there is no possible evidence that could convince me otherwise. And the ferry is one that I got convinced otherwise. I would love to see evidence about different approaches to homelessness.
Yeah.
Like I really do try to read everything, and
Yes, you do.
like
Every time I talk to you off hours, you're reading something like some 100,000-page document on the internet
Yeah.
that I didn't even know
an
existed.
audiobook
Like a
for
chart, to
I was gonna say,
various
It's like,
charters
yeah, like a
between
code or
Multnomah County and
a lot of people are
Portland.
reading, Lord of the Rings or something, and he's reading that.
there's fun stuff in Multnomah County Code. There's like a whole the
I know
definition
because
section.
you've read it. I know.
The definition section is like almost poetic. Like
What?
No, he's
seriously,
not actually as a
Is
lawyer.
it?
You're not
Okay.
wrong
I
about
just think
that.
that's so
But
funny
that's
that
true in
that's what you're
statutes too.
reading. Yeah.
because it's like and may mean or if the sense requires it, or may mean and. Like it feels like reading Lewis Carroll. Like
Great. Great.
Totally.
I mean,
I love it. I'm just glad that there's somebody like you that exists because somebody's got to read this stuff, right?
there is. It's like there's arguments about like the sign code for political candidate signs,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like I've read the sign code. Nobody follows the sign code. Business, if you want an A frame, like an A sign
Yeah.
that kind of goes like this. I don't know what camera to point this
Yeah.
to. Yeah, like you have to get a permit for that. Like very few businesses have permits in place for that, right? There's all these things in code that nobody follows. Like the one I get frustrated with. Technically, right now, not only are you not allowed to have a no cash business in Portland unless you're in a particular regulated area.
Really?
Yep, technically you're not supposed to. It's in the rules. Like it's in
You're
there.
saying city or
City
So
rules,
I
really
can't
city
remember. Oh,
code
there's a sign that says, okay.
says no cash. Yep, technically you're not supposed to
Okay,
do that, but it's
okay.
in the rules. The other thing is too that if you got a TV on at the bar, it's got to have closed captioning.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I know from working in TV that just making content on there, we would be
So,
fined if we didn't provide captioning.
In
So
that
it's an
sense,
FCC.
we care about the disabled,
Right.
but we're not going to be
Well,
clearing right of ways for them.
well, no, I mean it's the same thing in a way, right? Like this is the rule, right?
Yeah,
We're
it
saying
is the same thing.
it is important for businesses to have the closed captioning on. Great. Are we going to make sure that they do that?
Right. There's nobody
No.
going around checking the TVs.
And that would be ridiculous to do right now when you can't even get up and down the sidewalk, right?
Mhm.
Like, and I think that's why I think it's really important to look at our approach to these behaviors and say, look, the purpose and our approach here is to maintain public order,
Mhm.
right? Law
Yeah.
enforcement is a tool that we use to maintain an orderly public environment.
Well, with a different DA in January, I think we can have a system partner if we decide to look at things through that lens. I mean, obviously, we haven't been I don't remember the last time Portland was looking at things through that
Yeah.
lens, but
I mean,
hopefully we can start. I mean, we don't have a choice.
we don't have a
It's
choice.
we continue to circle the drain or we change things. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you just need to get us to a place where we have an environment where people
Just
know what to expect.
civility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's like growing up here, like
I
I
know.
I remember being in middle school and going down and hanging out on Burnside and Third,
Yeah.
like for an afternoon, and with my friends talking to people who are homeless, right? Obviously, that place has been full of homeless people for like 100 years, right? Salvation Army starts down there. It's
Yeah.
been an issue for a long time. And we were fine, right?
Yeah.
Like,
There wasn't the same safety kind of.
The nature of that has
no,
changed.
yeah, because the
The
drugs
drugs have changed.
changed,
Mhm.
right?
That's
Like,
right.
if I had a
It's
middle
not
schooler
meth
today and they
anymore.
went and hung out
Yeah.
on Burnside and Third, I'd be a lot more concerned. Not because there are or aren't homeless people, but because the situation has changed,
Mhm.
right?
Fentanyl, P2P meth.
Yeah,
Like Sam Quinones said, I don't know that they call it even meth anymore. Meth changed the game
the
when
meth
that came on the
changed.
scene, and that was a long time ago,
Yeah.
Yeah,
20 some years
And there's
ago.
a lot of factors too. I was thinking the whole,
There's a lot of factors.
downtown being a lot more empty because of remote work. There's
Yep.
just a
Yes.
lot of factors on top of that that contribute to the
Yeah.
to that, like, yeah, not wanting to
180
drop your
nights
kid
of
down there.
burning,
Yeah.
the city burning.
Yeah.
yeah. And a bunch of the services are located down there. I don't think it's a mistake nationally that you see a lot of homeless services brought
I don't
into
either.
the Chinatowns of different cities.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're.
And you used to live down there, right?
I used to live
Yeah.
down in Old
Yeah.
Town, Chinatown.
Yeah, Jessie Burke talks about that a lot.
Yeah, and
She's Chinese.
Jesse's
Yeah.
100% right about that. Like, the reason that happens is because communities have had less influence politically and have been able to push back against it less. I mean, and I'm thinking about in New York and in San Francisco in particular. There are also places where you might want to put services, right? I get they're often in the
It's
central part of the
close.
city,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
But it is when you're only using that neighborhood, it seems kind of strange. Yeah.
yeah. And I just, I think we need to get to a place where people can expect an orderly public environment,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Absolutely.
Yes.
it's one
It
thing.
doesn't seem like too much to ask, but
Yeah, because
it's a tall order, unfortunately, right now.
right. And there was a good I think there's a piece the other day about this town. I forget where it was, somewhere in the South, where they moved a lot of their officers from enforcing day-to-day kind of behaviors to homicide investigation. As a result, over a period of a couple of years, they were able to bring their homicide rate way down. But these other behaviors ticked up. And all the polling there now shows that people think the crime rate is way up
Because their quality of life
Because it's
crimes
visible.
because it's visible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
and
it's like,
probably more common than homicides, which is a good
yeah,
thing, but
which is a good thing, right?
now their livability has
Yeah,
been impacted.
you have to do an all of the above kind of approach, right? I'm not saying that
I
we
mean,
should.
people would criticize that and say it's broken windows policing, but I think that's to use that phrase, I think that's a broken criticism. I think we've seen it. Like, I think most Portlanders know that's like a broken criticism because the polling says most don't feel safe.
And frankly, from what I've seen, broken windows policing, it wasn't disproven. It was just our approaches to addressing it were very racist
Outsized in
and outside.
terms of
Yeah.
proportionality.
Like that,
Yeah.
the problem with broken windows wasn't the theory. The theory,
You could argue it's implementation.
the implementation was the issue.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
like, it's still a theory that, as far as I'm aware, hasn't been disproven, and as far as I understand, the data shows that there's, some reason to believe in it, right? I think,
Yeah, that's my understanding too.
yeah, and like, I would like to see an understanding, when it looks at broken windows, you can say, okay, we're gonna go really hard after the people who are breaking windows. That's one approach. The other approach is, okay, let's fix all the windows,
Yeah.
right? Like, let's,
You're addressing the same visibility issue.
yeah, and like, definitely get them if you see them break the
Just
windows,
enforce the law.
enforce the law, make sure that we don't have public environments that are
Mm-hmm.
just plywood on windows
Right.
everywhere.
Yeah. I get tired of saying the Mad Max thing, but
It's true. It's
it does look like Mad
apocalyptic.
Max.
It does. It's Thunderdome. Yeah.
Yeah, like, Not a fan of that. And I get why, bad behavior happens,
Right.
right? People think, okay, I can get away with this here. Like,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
frankly,
And they're coming in from all over to do it. Yes.
yeah. Or like, it's like in the same way that I'm saying, if you want to get people to ride public transit,
Yes.
don't think about how you feel. Think about how the people who aren't taking it feel. Uh, there are very few people engaged in criminal activity who have thought through it rationally,
Right.
right? We don't have a problem in Portland with people doing bank heists.
Right.
Right. These are not,
Yeah.
this is not organized.
Yeah, yeah, or
Yeah.
like
It's not a Tony Soprano
yeah. I mean, there
issue in
is that
terms
stuff that
of street level
happens.
crime. Corruption's a whole different deal.
It's a whole other thing. There is stuff like that that happens. But what I will say is,
And the organized crime is about pills.
yeah,
That's our problem. Our organized crime
Yeah.
is, and that's where they're
Fentanyl stuff.
real organized.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Real
Well,
organized.
it's funny you read that up because I was talking to this with District 1 candidate the other day about. I always talk about how in Southeast Portland, and I'm in our District 3 here, there's miles of these unpaved roads where
Oh,
I
yeah.
live on.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And I was just explaining, well, people always say, like,
District 4
why are you
too.
talking about this a lot? And because I've had RVs stay out at my house for literally like years at a time. I found bullet casings out here. I've had trash
Mhm.
dumped right in front of my house.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've
And
gone
when you
out
have that
seen
kind
it.
of environment, that's what attracts it. People think that, oh, it's okay to do this kind of behavior. And I think
Yes.
that's kind of what you're getting at. Is
And
like,
who would
Yeah.
you call to deal with it? Like, I don't think you probably didn't call the police when you found the bullet
I think
casings.
no.
And you
I
probably
was-
didn't call the police when you saw
No,
on
because
like your
it's
ring
one
camera
because it's
people
one of
dumping all their
1,000
trash.
incidents that happens every day. And outside, there's another one up here that I walk my dog by, and I was telling this story on a previous episode where it looked like an RV just dumped its entire sewage tank
Yeah.
along the thing.
God.
So, but it's just like when you have environments that look dilapidated, that's what's going to happen. Is people kind of think that it's okay to
Yeah.
engage in that kind of behavior. But
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm sure some of it is a function of harassment, but there's a reason why you see less camping in Laurelhurst than in Eastmoreland.
right.
And I don't
Well,
think it's necessarily because the residents.
Laurelhurst Park was,
Laurelhurst Park had
There was a
such
time when,
I
yeah, it
mean,
was,
a
yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
need to acknowledge that. I think that's pretty important.
But generally in the neighborhood level, it's not.
It's a little less.
It's not like Lentz in
No,
if
it's
you're
not
walking
like
through.
Lentz.
Yeah.
And something I want to complain about. I got a survey from a group the other day that wanted to kind of rank candidates on these different levels, and they drew a dichotomy between kind of approaching issues with more police or more services.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And I think far too often we let people draw a connection between poverty and criminality. Like, there are a lot of poor people who are not criminals, like, right?
Who are
Like,
crime victims.
or crime
They're
victims. Yeah.
besieged.
The number one victim of people who are homeless, who are doing criminal activity, are other homeless people.
That's yes. There's that. There is that. And there's also all the polling and the voter return that showed East County voting for Renee Gonzalez over Joanne Hardesty,
Right.
who, in my opinion, helped the defunding the police platform. And so I think they were tired of it.
Yeah. I mean, even in this district, in District 3, right, the neighborhoods that were more likely to vote Vasquez besides Laurelhurst and North Tabor were more likely to have
To
more
be
working
crime
class
victims
and have more crime.
and be working probably multiple jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, when you looked at Measure 110, right, all of the polling said that that people of color were more in favor of recriminalization than white people.
Mm-hmm.
But people come out often and say, well, this is what communities want. It's like, well, no, I'm looking at the polling data. Like, you can say that you represent this community, but it's really hard to argue with this poll that is pretty representative.
Yeah, East County is the
And-
most diverse.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Voting, if you look at the voting data in District 1 as well, it's diverse, it's
That's the most
middle,
diverse
lower
neighborhood.
class, and they all are pro law enforcement,
And they vote that way.
pro drug recriminalization.
And it's
that
not,
stuff.
it's not everyone, right? Like, I get it.
No.
Like, all I'm saying is, like, I understand the idea of equity as this principle. I think self-determination is more important because I don't want to force the principle of equity on people that don't want it.
Yeah.
right? If you,
Right, particularly people of color. I mean, that's the whole concept. And I just interviewed this guy who created the show, Hassan Hates Portland. His name
yeah,
is Misha Webley, and he's super brilliant. And the show is about that.
right.
The show is about white people foisting their good
Yeah.
intentions
Yeah.
onto people of color.
I always think of
Their equity, their ideas of equity, their ideas. That's Terrence Hayes' criticism
yeah.
too.
Yeah,
This
he's
is
right.
kind of a aside, but I always think of Breon's. He told a story on your show where this is on the last election cycle, but a white person came up to him and put a Biden sign on his lawn, and he was just really offended that just because he was black, he thought that this guy would.
Yeah. And he was
But it's that kind of thing.
helping
Of, I
him
don't know.
and that he needed to be helped. It's sort of like what Misha said is, and I
You're
thought this was so
assuming
brilliant.
based on race that how a person thinks.
Yes,
And
Right.
but not only that, you're enforcing the very power structures that you're claiming you're trying to dismantle because you're the savior and this is someone who needs to be saved
Yeah,
with
yeah.
your idea
Like the
of
white.
what equity is.
Yeah. Like if an idea is good, you don't need to force it upon someone, right?
Right.
Like, uh, like very much understand, these approaches and these thoughts, but like I would rather lead with self-determination as this ideal. And, obviously you want to address these disparities when it comes to income and
Of course.
wealth. Those are really important that you address it. But when it comes to like, okay, are we going to throw these bike lanes
Yeah.
in a neighborhood?
There's policy stuff. Yeah.
Probably a good idea to check in
Mhm.
with people in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
Because-
Terrence talked about that recently.
And the Terrence coming out with these bike lanes thing, I think is really important.
Yes, it
And I think the
is.
conversation is really important, not just because I
Misha
think
show
our
makes fun of that too.
yeah, and because like I think that when you build a bike lane, like what's the goal, right?
For everybody to use it.
For everybody to use it, and
And you're assuming that everybody will and
You're trying to
can, and that's a big
shift
assumption.
people to bikes in
trying to
some
shift
way.
people to bikes.
Yeah.
You're trying to improve safety, I think, first.
Yeah.
Right. And there are plenty of bike lanes in the central part of the city and not way out in East Portland that could be built better.
Oh my
thi-
goodness.
I
They
think-
go, I mean, you're turning right and it goes right through you.
Yeah.
When you're supposed you have the green light and you're turning right and here comes bikes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's no video or mirror or you're relying on your mirror and your ability to crane your neck far enough to see somebody coming. The way they've set that up is one of the most dangerous things I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, having the signals be
everybody.
separated. Yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah, why wouldn't you do that?
do that. You don't do it because it's expensive. Like signals in particular are really expensive for a number of reasons that are really frustrating. But I think
I just think it's created some of those lanes have created some problems and these plastic sticks everywhere.
the sticks are really stupid.
I
Like, and the bike people will tell you that too, right? They're like having these lanes that are just paint on the ground isn't very helpful. Having the sticks, the ticklers, if I will call them that,
ticklers.
because they don't
just
stop you.
bendable
They just
things.
bend,
Yeah.
right. Like, they're more annoying to you on a bike than in a car. So what's the point?
Yeah.
That's not really protecting you.
No,
Like,
it's not.
so, if the city has this goal of a 25% bike commute share by 2030, can debate whether that's a good goal or not. It's like probably not achievable with the money we have. It's just not going to happen. It's a good goal, but I don't think it's possible today just because we spent a lot of time not doing the right thing. And also
And a lot of money not doing the right thing.
and the neighborhood today with the highest bike commute share has 11%. So
Mhm.
if you're going
Tells you a lot. Yeah.
if you're going to double it citywide, that neighborhood's probably going to have more like 70 or 80%
Mhm.
bike commute share.
Look, like Terrence said, people who bike are largely white, single, and don't have children,
Right.
or just white and don't have children.
Right.
Or they're not transporting children, and so they tend to be men, and they're not responsible for families. And try getting one child where they need to go and then getting to work on time to your one job, like Terrence said, let alone your second job, let alone getting home in time for them to get home from school and help them with their homework and whatever. It's not going to happen on a flippin' bike. Certainly not in this weather either.
One thing I was going to say too, and this will be out by the time you're watching, if you're still watching this and you're interested in transportation. But check out my Noah Ernst episode, which will be out,
Yeah.
because he really talked
He's
about
good.
how in District 1, PBOT has been doing all this stuff in District 1 despite what the community's been asking for.
And he's the radio cab
Yeah.
Yeah.
guy, right? Yeah.
He's
What-
a lawyer, radio cab guy. And
It's like, I like some of those lanes that they have set up out there, but I wouldn't want them out there.
yeah.
I'd rather have them here
Right.
because,
Especially where people are asking for them
yeah,
more.
because like if you're going to want
Yeah,
that
pay attention.
25% share, then you're going to need some neighborhoods with a really high rate.
Yes.
So let's get some neighborhoods to a really high rate where it's already going to be
Who
easier.
want it and will use it.
Exactly, right? Like it should be really, really safe for me to bike around west of 12th in particular in District 3, if
Mhm.
not west of Chavez,
Yeah.
right? Like those areas, like if you're biking downtown, you only have to go 2 miles. It's going to be easier to handle it that way.
Yeah.
Like it's all really important stuff, but if we're not able to show demonstrated increase in safety, which we haven't been for some of those
Yeah.
East Portland projects.
That's what he was pointing out. Is like it hasn't made a dent in any of this stuff.
Yeah.
What they're doing in East Portland.
Well, because on the other hand, too, right, we have this commitment to totally ending traffic deaths.
Vision
get that.
zero.
Vision
right?
zero. It's gone up. It's doubled since then.
Mhm.
It's doubled since then.
It's doubled since then. Half of the people last year who died in the report were unsheltered and homeless.
Street homeless, yes.
Yeah. So
So
again,
predictable.
like with the transit, like I think that one of the best ways to reduce those traffic deaths is to address homelessness and
Yeah.
unsheltered homelessness in particular.
Yeah.
Another way to free up those police resources is to address unsheltered homelessness, because half the homicides last year, either the perpetrator or the victim was
yes.
homeless.
Well,
right?
yeah, I mean, it was large. Yeah.
If you want to free up fire resources, 80% of calls downtown are homelessness related. Half of the calls
Yeah, that's
overall
right.
that are fires are homelessness related. And
That's why
most of them are
Renee
overdoses.
asked Portland Street Response to stop handing out tents and tarps
Yeah, which
because the fires were happening within tents. People didn't understand that data. They weren't seeing the adjacent fire data to that, and they were just getting exercised about no tents and tarps. And I think the problem was, no, I know this. I know the problem was because I have seen the data, and Isaac talks about it. Isaac McClendon from the Firefighters Union. Those tents and tarps were catching fire.
Yeah.
And these people were dying or their limbs were being burned, and then we were having to life flight them to other states
yeah.
because we have no people. We have all homeless people in the burn unit.
Yeah. When it is like, this bigger commitment to that is such the theme of
Yeah.
a lot of these problems. It's the
But
stem
again,
of a lot
it's
of
a
these problems.
county.
Yeah.
This is why I get so concerned when people forget about these county races.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why we just basically talked for a couple hours about homelessness, is
Yeah.
because it's at
It
the
is the
root of
number
a lot
one
of
thing.
these.
Yeah. And, there's the fight around the labels on the tents, saying funded by Multnomah County.
Oh, I didn't even know they were labeling them. That's weird. Yeah.
Like Gonzalez had proposed putting these labels on these tents saying
Okay.
funded by Multnomah County.
Right.
I love that.
I like if there's something that the government is funding that it wouldn't want to put the label on,
Don't do it.
don't do it.
I think that's why
Like-
she finally said she was going to stop.
Like if the government is
Right.
buying
Boofing
toothbrushes,
kits. Boofing kits.
Well-
They should have said funded by Multnomah
Right.
County.
like we have the
Foil
signs.
and straws.
Yeah, like we have the signs on the
Every
bridges.
needle, every single needle. I want every
Right.
single needle to have that Multnomah County stamp with the mountains on
Yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, it's like I want every fleet car that the city has to say funded by the city of Portland. The
Right.
bridges say funded by Multnomah County. Like
It used to say the city that works. That's what those cars
Right.
used to say.
the parks will say, yeah, we're funding this, right? Like I think everything we're doing, if we're doing it with public dollars, yeah, should be willing to say public dollars bought this. Like I don't understand why you wouldn't want to be excited about that. If you're spending money on something you're embarrassed about,
Yeah.
stop spending
But
money.
Daniel,
on
that
it.
would spotlight what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
It does kind of come down to that. If you're proud of the program,
Can
why?
you imagine all the photos that would show up on social media of like
Oh, man.
foil and straws with Multnomah
You could have a
County
great
stamps
Instagram
on
Yeah.
them?
account. Yeah.
Like I mean,
Called funded by Multnomah
Yeah.
County.
Yeah.
like I don't understand the issue. Like I did look when I was first campaigning, and I figured out you can't make campaign branded Narcan something I tried to look
Oh,
into.
wow. Wow.
You still can't distribute Narcan freely if you're not an organization, which I think is a mistake. Like it should
That's a restriction.
yeah, like
Okay.
it should be easier to get Narcan than it is to get bread.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
foil, or
foil or
straws, or
straws.
needles, or boofing
It
kits.
does seem kind of silly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And I mean, like the tent distribution, like I can understand why you would want to do that, right? Like I was sitting with someone who was very opposed to putting the labels on the tents, and I was like, okay, I think there's a good argument against putting the labels on the tents. I don't know why nobody's using it, but the argument is like it's going to take time and money to put the labels on the tents.
Right.
Sure.
It's a cost.
So if it drives up the cost of a tent 25%, and as a result, we're able to give tents to less people, then if you think tents are good, that's the best argument against
Sure.
labeling the tents. But nobody will use that argument
100%.
because they aren't willing to say that these are the ways that handing out the tents is saving lives. I can understand why handing out tents might save lives, but like don't do it while you don't have that plan for that next step for the sheltering.
Yeah, but also I don't think anybody's looking at the actual numbers, which shows that handing out tents is killing people.
Yeah.
Has been killing people, is killing people, keeps them in the tent
Right.
and
that's the bigger
dying
thing.
of
Yeah.
overdoses and
Yep.
being burned by fire.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
almost anti.
They're flammable. Like they
Yeah.
weren't just handing them, they weren't just being handed out. Like PSR wasn't just handing tents out. They were handing tents out with, sometimes it was beer.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was flammable material. Sometimes it was a cigarette.
Yeah.
Which that combo seems like the deadliest. That seems
Yeah,
crazy.
well, their
Yeah.
argument is
Yeah.
it was to establish trust.
Right, right.
But here's what I want to know. And Sarah Nelson asked this question at Seattle City Council, and nobody was able to answer this question because they don't keep those metrics. How many people have we been able to build trust with
Right.
enough through needles, straws, boofing kits, and foil to bring into detox and rehab and eventually get housed and onto their psychiatric medication and become productive members of society? How many?
Right. I can
Can they
understand
name
it.
a single one?
Yeah.
And nobody could.
No.
Nobody could answer that question.
Yeah.
I don't understand why we're not conditioning any kind of harm reduction or trust metrics. Harm reduction to solve disease, sure, that I get, but this isn't our issue. Just to be frank, isn't really AIDS anymore. It now seems to be fentanyl.
Yeah.
So,
Like, and you know,
we're not caught up,
needle exchange is a proven model,
which we don't do.
which we don't
It's
do.
a needle handout. It's a handout.
Which I have not seen the evidence for, right?
I haven't either. They don't have it. They don't keep
have
it. Where is it?
Yeah, which, you know, like, I'm willing to,
How many people have we brought to detox and rehab through needle handouts?
or yeah, like at least provide, if you can provide an estimate of anything, right? But the overdoses
do it.
keep going up.
Right.
They keep
We
going
just
up.
saw that thing
Like,
this week about statewide is kind of dipping, but Portland is kind of
Portland's still going up.
flatlining or up or whatever.
Yeah, like nationally it's down. I mean, Seattle was able to reduce encampments 67% over the last 2 years and down 20% in just one quarter, right? One, they're doing a quarterly count. That's something we don't do.
Yeah.
But two, they have that result, right? We don't have to send people to Portugal
Right.
to learn how to solve these
So
problems.
stupid.
We can send them to Seattle, or we can send them to Washington or Multnomah County, or even we had plans in place on homelessness before that achieved results. That 10-year plan to end homelessness, it didn't end homelessness, but it did get it down at least 20%.
Well,
right.
that Portugal trip really backfired. I mean, that was, a lot of people paid for themselves, but that was the Drug Policy Alliance idea and funded by them
Yeah.
initially. And the idea was to reinforce that drug decriminalization was a good idea, so recriminalization wouldn't go through the legislature. And boy, when Aaron Schmaltz, they paid for their own way, the police association did, when he came back and said, well, they don't have guns or fentanyl
Yeah.
in Portugal, I said, well, that's all we need.
Yeah.
That we're done
You
here.
can't really.
Yep. Yep.
I don't need to
compare
hear
it.
anything else.
I've been to Portugal already. I've been to Sacramento, where the county commission just went, so I don't need to go anywhere else.
You've been to Washington and Clackamas counties. Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Sacramento is doing interesting. San Jose is doing interesting things. Like, there's a lot of places in the country that are doing things right. Like, in particular, I know there's that poll from the Police Association December last year
Yes.
where, they're throwing out a lot of different ballot measure ideas. And one that I think was under discussed was this proposal that would require the city of Portland to provide shelter for every single person on the street.
Mhm.
83% in favor,
Of course.
right?
Right.
Like,
Sounds great. Yeah.
yeah, that like polls better than Mao in China, right? Like
Right.
83%. It's hard. I couldn't get 83% on much of anything.
Right.
So the fact that 83% of Portland voters support this, I think, shows that you need that change. And there are cities in the country that already have that in place. New York City, not a place that's well known for a non-corrupt, well-functioning government.
Yeah, but
Not
they
a,
shelter their homeless.
they shelter their
They're street
homeless. It's
homeless.
not a question of the
Try
housing
to set
cost.
up a tent in Times Square. Good luck to you.
It's yeah,
You
like
will be picked up and put in a
there's
paddy wagon and taken somewhere.
yeah, and like there's the rare exception, right? But they have 96% of their
It's a
homeless
lot.
and the shelter. It's still a problem, right? Some of the shelters are not great. Having people who are homeless in shelters, that's still a problem.
Right.
Of
But
course.
it's a better problem to have
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
people who are unsheltered,
Of course.
It's an
right?
upgrade from where we were at.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but I think if
Letting perfect be the enemy of the
we're letting the
good.
person be the end of good, right? Like, let's get to that next problem
Yeah.
of getting people out of shelters and into housing.
Yep.
But right now, we're saying we're not even going to try that first step. And I think that's a
Yeah.
mistake because I am not willing to tell someone who's on the street that we don't have a spot for them because we would rather house a fewer number of people.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the fundamental thing here.
Yeah, and I don't know. I try to repeat it over and over, but that's what I always say. It's a lose-lose situation. It's bad for the people in the tent. It's bad for the people who live in the house next to the tent, and that's all we're trying to do. I think there's a lot of people out there who just think that like, oh, you just want to sweep these people for forever.
Right.
And that's not what any of us are saying. It's just like
Nobody
shelter.
wants that.
Yeah.
Shelter is the solution.
And I think what really, to me, illuminates the lack of good intentions from my opponents who are not willing to commit to getting to 100% shelter and nonetheless oppose sweeps is that they will not advocate for sanctioned camping.
Which is
Yeah, they
insane
just
to me.
think housing is
Yeah.
the answer.
Right. Which, like, if you think that allowing people to camp in an unsanctioned way is okay, I can understand why you might think that. Then surely you think that allowing them to camp somewhere where they won't be swept is preferable, right?
Mhm.
Because now that thing that you disliked, the sweeping, will not be occurring. They have the same level of services they had unsanctioned.
I see they are, these people, in my opinion, are so far left. It's practically right leaning. So this is like, it's not libertarian because I think it infringes on the rights of others at some point, but it is all about the liberty of the drug user.
And
I mean, that's true for the ACLU of Oregon.
yeah,
That's true for all of these groups, those ideologically aligned groups. It's about the right. I mean, that same piece of questioning at Seattle City Council that I was talking about with Sarah Nelson, she asked this question and they said, this is about the liberty of the drug user to make decisions.
Or if they're not even a drug user, it's almost like they're arguing it's the right for them to languish in a tent on the street when there's a better option
Yes,
of an indoor
But the ACLU will
shelter,
say that
or even a
about,
sanctioned site, which has less problems.
in my
because of that.
opinion, I am hearing the same language from the ACLU of Oregon about the mentally ill, which is
Right.
this is about their liberty to be untreated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why there is pushback. There is pushback against raising the bar for mental commitments.
I know. And I was just thinking that's a whole nother
yeah.
state problem that we have. But
Yeah, like it's like I'm attracted to that idea, right? Like
I am not, because I've had mentally ill and addicted I'm dad and sister. And when somebody's brain is gone to
Yeah.
the point where they've lost so much ability to self-regulate that they're sleeping on a sidewalk, they don't, that ability to make decisions, period,
Yeah,
is gone.
absolutely.
There's no,
I think that's what he was saying is you
liberty
were.
there.
Yeah, like I could like this is getting my point of like, oh, I don't want to be 100% confident, right? Like I can understand saying, yeah, this person has some degree of liberty that they're entitled to. Like I was first
Yeah,
I was a card carrying member of the ACLU at 12, so I
I
understand
was
this stuff. No longer a
too.
member, but
I was too.
I wasn't. I was never.
And
I'm
I
just kidding.
donated to them.
yeah, I mean, I donated money to them too, right? Like Now I think I would donate mortar fire, but that's just me.
Yes.
I like understand that situation to draw like a parallel. Uh, so last summer, my grandma passed away,
Sorry.
and she had dementia. It was kind of onset over time, right? She had said for years that if she thought she was going to get dementia over time, that she would move to Oregon and use medically assisted suicide,
You
right?
can't use it for that.
You can't use it for that once you have the dementia.
That's right.
And so as a result, she, slowly lost her mind living in Salt Lake, where she lived. Because we say that there's some situations in which you cannot make this choice for yourself. And one of those situations is being this, frankly, mentally incompetent, right? So I feel like I have talked to people on the street here in Portland who are less lucid than my grandma was in her last months.
For sure.
So why are we allowing them to kill themselves?
Yeah.
Right.
It's very powerful.
Or make powerful life decisions
Yeah.
that
affect all
could
of
kill
us.
them, or
That affect all of us.
yeah,
That are
yeah,
killing them. But we know we're killing them
Yeah.
yeah.
in horrific ways.
Like I think anyone who's had a
Being
friend
burned
go
to
through
death.
drug addiction or alcoholism knows that, tolerance and compassion are not the same thing.
Right.
Like sometimes fundamentally what someone needs is a little bit of a firm stance. We acknowledge this fundamentally by saying that a ambulance 100% has assumed consent to grab someone and bring them to the hospital if they're passed out.
Right.
Right? If someone is totally not able to respond, we are willing to remove that liberty and take them to a hospital even when they haven't actively consented, right? I'm willing to say that I think that addiction is something extra to a person, and it's something that you are going to live the rest of your life with, and that every addict would prefer they not be actively using.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I think I'm comfortable with saying that we need to take a little bit of a more firm approach. If you can't get that commitment law changed, then we should throw more drug addiction resources in the jails. Like like very few people are being brought to the deflection center who we couldn't have otherwise booked them for something else. Right? Like, we are not
a high percentage.
Yeah, we're not just searching someone and
That's
finding drugs
for
and sending
sure
them to
true.
deflection, right? So why can't we, if we're not gonna be able to change these commitment thresholds, why can't we bring in drug addiction resources into the jails where we already have a threshold? Like,
We also have 250 empty beds, and as Nicole Busher, head of the Corrections Union, has said,
Inverness, am I saying that
we
right?
could change Inverness. We could change the nature of that space.
yeah, absolutely. Like, make that our drug addiction treatment facility. Because, like,
Why not?
like as much as we need to do a lot when it comes to fentanyl. Like, frankly, there are still a lot of people who are overdosing and getting addicted to these substances who are housed and aren't otherwise engaged in criminal activity, and we need to address that. But the really urgent thing are these other things that are connected to it. And so if we have the chance to book someone who's an addict and bring them the resources through that, instead of waiting for this longer conversation about commitment to occur and then having to set up new facilities, if we can get them the facilities after booking them and get them those services after booking them, then we should do that, because the alternative is, again, just letting people languish.
Right.
Like,
You
it's
could
not ideal.
pick them up 10 times, and each time is another chance
Yeah.
of them dying or
I had a
something
friend
happening.
who
Eli talked about,
I had a friend who arraigned someone this summer who had 48 failures to appear.
That's right. Yeah, you talked about that.
Like, fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 47 times. Like, that's
Yeah,
just
and it's an I just see it, that's an opportunity. People always talk about they got to accept treatment when they're ready. That's an opportunity
It
right
seems like
there
low hanging fruit.
for someone who's addicted to get out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it doesn't all need to be people committing the most serious crimes like
No.
Mike Schmidt had for drug court. It shouldn't. In fact, it shouldn't be. I mean,
No.
those are people who should probably be incapacitated from society. I mean, it should be everybody who wants drug treatment should get it,
Should be able to get it. Yeah, because it's a win-win.
and
It saves
particularly
you.
lower levels should get diversion. I mean, that was the whole point behind the revision of Measure 110.
Yeah. Like I get
Reflection, I guess we
my
call
hot
it.
take on Measure 110 is that and the change is I don't know why we recriminalized everything. Like it's obvious that
Well, we
it's
didn't. We didn't recriminalize everything.
well
I don't know enough about
they
it,
can still get
honestly.
you for possession for like psychedelics now
Mm.
or ketamine.
Well,
Like
because we have regulations on who can have it.
oh, I know, but we could have kept those decriminalized. Like all I'm saying is what we're not deflecting people for their ketamine addictions,
That's not the main
right?
drug.
Like we have booked like maybe 90 people through deflection yet, and $5 on the table right now, I'd be willing to bet none of it was for a possession of anything other than
I think the issue is
opiates or
fentanyls in
meth.
everything on the street.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And
I guess.
so even if there's a little bit of ketamine in there, I mean, I think what they tell you is, I think the PSA on this to every single person's child and everybody suffering from addiction who's thinking about, oh, maybe I'll just get a pill on the street is
don't
don't do it.
don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
Yeah.
talking
So
about it.
that's the issue.
it gets into everything.
I was just saying, both my other guests this weekend, I was talking to you about it. And people who have kids, it's just a huge, scary thing for
Yes,
them.
it
And,
is.
I was gonna get to my get to wrap it up here. Is there anything
Yeah.
else you want to say, like serious stuff before I before I get into my
Are you
Serious
voting
questions?
no on Measure 118?
I was gonna
Oh
ask.
yeah, Measure 118. Yeah, no.
We can do a
That's
quick. I don't think anyone's suggested voting for that I know
Not even the
of.
governor. Yeah.
Yeah, Measure 118 is a bad measure. It's a gross receipts tax. I know, talking to a lot of Oregonians, right? Uh, talking with friends who grew up here, they'll say, well, when we go to Washington, why don't they include the sales tax in the price that's on the shelf, right? Like, why is it added up at the register later?
Yeah. People don't like to be surprised.
Yeah, that's what a gross receipts tax is.
That's right.
A gross receipts tax is a sales tax where it's worked into the price that shows up.
Just like the cat tax.
Yeah,
I mean, sometimes they throw that at the bottom, but a lot of the time they've changed the prices.
yeah, and so
Corporate activities tax that everybody passed.
and it's on the gross receipts, so it's going to discourage lower margin businesses, right? If you're a business that makes a huge profit margin on what you're selling, you're gonna be less affected than one that has a lower profit margin, like a restaurant, right?
Which we tend
all
to
the
care
razor
about.
thin margin
All the razors,
Yeah.
businesses.
Small
like,
businesses.
anything that's a payment processor is
Yes.
never going to want to put an office here, right? Like San Francisco had a similar problem where they put something in like this and they lost Square.
Yeah, I was just thinking of Square. Yeah,
They process
Wow.
transactions for other businesses.
probably like
Wow.
every food cart you've ever gone to.
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
Square. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you're reducing the ability of these certain kinds of businesses to operate, right? And it's gonna, the money coming in to people is going to put them over thresholds at the federal level around income limits for different benefits, right? So we might see people lose access to other benefits they would have already had access to, and it's flat, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like everyone
It's
is
a
going to
flat
get.
percentage. Yes.
and
It's not progressive.
It's not progressive, and the amount that comes back to people is not progressive.
That's the one thing I don't hear a lot about. That I've heard a little bit, but yeah, it's just like so anyone making a lot of money getting the same amount as
Yeah.
low income, middle income people. It just seems very
Yeah.
So everybody stays the same.
right.
Right. Yeah.
No
it
one
does-
is lifted out of poverty
Doesn't
here.
seem yeah.
Yeah. And, it's like when I first heard of UBI, when it was first being brought out, I thought, okay, this is great because if you say gave $1 to every person on the planet every day, you'd be uplifting billions of people out of poverty, right? I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, universal. That's a great idea. State of Oregon,
Right.
like
yeah.
state of Oregon benefit, like I get it. It might be more useful at the federal level. The other purpose of these programs is to make it, less useful to have individualized targeted programs.
Yeah.
So I think overall, it's obviously a bad measure. We need to stop doing these kinds of gross receipt taxes and weird taxes.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with someone who runs an accounting business here that helps small businesses.
Do accounting, yeah.
do accounting. And she said, I shouldn't complain to you about this, but the fact that there are so many little taxes here has actually been very useful to my
It's
business.
great for her.
But when I do our own taxes, they're really annoying.
Right.
So, like, it's one thing that we have a high tax environment and not return on it. That's obviously a huge problem. The other thing is we have too many individualized taxes,
Yeah.
right? Like in Portland, the problem isn't big government, it's too many.
It's 1,000 cuts or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you have to get those taxes back in line with at least our peer counties in Washington and Clackamas County, because we're losing too many people and losing too many families in particular
Yeah.
to the outer
I'll say that,
counties.
and that's where businesses and families are going.
Yeah.
These adjacent counties, because they don't want to,
And they want a
pay
school
100
district.
different taxes on something.
Yeah. And the schools need to be fixed. I mean, gosh, that's
a whole nother thing.
Mhm.
it's not a funding thing, guys.
I was thinking too, like,
It's definitely
I
not.
don't know why this just occurred to me, but this would essentially be the first statewide sales tax.
Yes.
You can think of it that
that's-
way, I guess, right? I mean,
Well,
Yeah.
that's why you called it the hidden sales tax, right?
It's a hidden
Daniel?
sales
Yeah.
tax,
Yeah.
yeah. Which, like, I can understand why you might want a sales tax, but I think in this situation, it doesn't make sense.
yeah.
You could be someone who earns a lot of money here and doesn't spend it at businesses,
Right.
and then the tax, then you get it paid back, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's a mistake. I could understand, a different approach. Like, there's other things that there's other kind of tax questions that I think would be better to focus time and energy on.
Yeah.
But that measure, I don't trust it. The ranked choice voting, very pro ranked choice voting. I wish it wasn't on the ballot this time.
Just because there's a lot of different issues.
And like, I think, we should see the results from Portland.
Yeah. As a kind of moniker or
Yeah.
indicator.
I don't trust it because the legislators exempted themselves from being in the ranked choice.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I
Like,
didn't know that.
don't trust that. I would rather that be something you do for all of them or not. Open primaries is really the important thing.
Open primaries.
That's
yes.
really the important
And
thing.
of course, the two political machines are going to fight that tooth and nail. But
Yeah.
we need it. We need open primaries.
Yeah. I can't remember what else is on the ballot.
All right. I gotta get
Yeah.
these. I thought we would not
Poor
even come
Andy.
close
Yeah,
to
what
our
are these
other
fun
episode
questions?
length, but
I will
we
talk.
just love talking to you, Daniel. So.
Fun questions?
Yeah, fun questions. This is gonna come out of nowhere, but are you watching Rings of Power?
No.
Okay.
What
I
is
watched
that?
the finale
I don't
last
even know
night.
what it is.
It's the Lord of the Rings
I'm so out of
TV
it.
show.
Okay.
Anyway, I just wanted to.
That's why I don't know what it is.
I'm gonna go through my normal ones out of memory here. And if we've done this before, just remind me because I don't remember. But when you park somewhere like you did in my house here, do you normally pull in or do you back in like at a shopping center or something?
I pull in.
Okay.
Unless I can go all the way through.
Without the stopper thing, and just
Without the stop
Yeah,
thing, go all the way
okay.
through. But I've got a really little car.
you do, yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a little easier.
Yeah.
You like crunchy or smooth peanut butter? Maybe you don't like peanut.
Crunchy peanut butter. Winco brand crunchy.
Okay, Winco brand.
Winco brand
Does it
crunchy.
have oil in it?
No.
Have you tried the new season's Himalayan salt peanut butter?
No.
I've been getting
Sorry.
recommendations too. By the way, somebody, I think it was Kezia, recommended Trader Joe's brand. I'm just like, I don't know.
Trader
I'll
Joe's?
try any peanut butter.
It's a good one too.
Yeah.
I'm just usually a Winco guy.
I know. I like it. Shout out to Winco. Let me see here. If you're getting ice cream somewhere, do you go waffle cone, regular cone, cup?
Honestly, usually a cup.
I
But
like
waffle
the cup.
cone. Like, I'm a messy eater.
Okay.
I'll admit to that.
Yeah. I'll admit to that too, and I'll say that okay, this might gross some people out, but a lot of my home clothes that I wear have a lot of food stains on them. So what you're looking at now, this is not what. If I'm just kicking it at home watching football, like I'll do later, I might have some food stains on my clothes. But
Yeah.
I haven't had enough meals with you.
I told you,
But
It's
we had a
gross.
messy
It's gross.
meal, I thought, the last time we had a meal together, and I didn't. Although it was dark,
Oh.
it was in a bar. So
But ice cream wise,
I'm saying not in public.
ice cream wise, chocolate all the way. I'm a chocolate
okay.
guy.
Okay.
Sorry.
I like it.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite type of French fry? Do you like crinkle cut, regular cut, curly fries, waffle fries?
It's sweet potato fry really is. I
Potato.
don't know. That's a different
I like it.
question,
Yeah.
right? But
where do you like to get them?
Yeah,
French
you
fries.
got a local
The sweet
place.
potato fries. Is there a place you go to eat them? This is how I
No.
learned about a really good waffle fry place from Sam Adams. And
Where?
it's I
Called
think
Take
Take
Two
Two in
and
Killing near
Okay.
Killingsworth or on Killingsworth, I think. Yeah, northeast.
No, I
Pretty deep
I want to
northeast.
say, doesn't Burgerville have those
They do,
fries?
but they're not very
sometimes.
good.
Yeah.
I'd rather make it myself than eat the Burgerville
Yeah.
ones, in my opinion.
We'll make those and bring them on the show. I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yes.
Usually I'm not.
They'll be cold by the time we.
I don't eat very much like fast food, I guess. So I'm not buying French fries. Like I'll buy French fries at a dive,
Yeah.
but otherwise,
So you
sure.
don't.
I make them at home maybe,
Oh, you do you?
but not fried.
Okay, but you don't.
I'm not-
If sweet potato fries are on the menu, you won't. You don't order them.
I might order them. They're just out of the. I usually am not a fry guy.
Yeah. What
right?
kind of guy are you?
What's your side? Yeah, you have a
I
side.
mean, I've been eating I eat a lot of burritos. My partner.
Okay.
Okay.
What
insists
is
on
your
burritos.
favorite burrito?
You know, favorite? It's a hard question. Like if someone is like, I want to go eat a burrito and I want to eat the best, I tell them, okay, go past 82nd and go to a cart, any cart.
Some good cards, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how you find a good burrito.
True.
If I'm running around, like I don't mind stopping by Habaneros, which used to be a Muchas Gracias. It's not the best in the world, but at
Gets the job
$10, it
done.
gets the
Yeah.
job
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
I'll get in the weeds with this sometimes about people. I just want to know, do you consider tater tots a French fry? I think it's in the family. I have a wide
It's in
French
the
fry
family.
of.
It's fried potatoes.
Yeah, it's fried potato.
But then home fries are too. Hash browns.
It's not
Some-
a cut.
JoJo's, I guess, are French fries, I would say.
I have the extreme position of I also consider hash browns as part of it, but
Mm.
it depends on how you prepare them and cook them.
I mean, okay.
I
did not
I'm
know
a French
this.
fry extreme.
If that's true, I'm going to revise my answer. It was the McDonald's French fry. It is now the McDonald's hash brown.
Those are
Oh.
great. Yeah, the little
Yeah.
rectangle.
The
Yeah.
rectangle thing.
Mind
Yeah,
blown.
yeah. I am not gonna say that a tater tot is a French fry.
Okay,
But I do like a
it's
good
not the
tater
first time I've
tot.
heard it.
It's an Oregon. Didn't we invent that
Somebody
one? Right?
said, yeah, Oregon or maybe Idaho. I'm not sure.
There's a lot of fun things invented here
Yeah.
nobody talks about.
Pronto Pup, if you ever heard of that. That's
Yeah,
an Oregon.
That's Oregon.
I
Here we
don't
did the plywood manufacturing was invented here.
Is that right?
Well,
Yeah.
that's good. That's come in handy.
Yeah, and the Phillips screw.
Okay.
Hmm.
Shout out to the Phillips, the one
Shout
we
out.
all use.
Yeah, yeah,
I guess sometimes it's the flat, but
yeah. And what else did we invent here? Oh,
Spruce Goose. No, I'm just,
no,
I think that lives here now. But
Miniville.
if I can tell a story, back in 1926, we had the Columbia River Gorge Highway, right?
okay, yeah.
Big deal at the time. It was like one of the top tourist attractions in the U.S. There's a motorcycle sheriff's officer. I'm forgetting his name right now. We had one of the first motorcycle squads in the country.
I didn't know that.
And this sheriff's officer went to the county commission and said, look, I'm dealing with head-on collisions, like day in and day out. That's pretty much what the entire job is right now. We should paint a line down the middle of the road so that people know what side of the road to stay on.
Can you imagine?
And the county commission says no. So he goes and buys 4,000 gallons of paint himself and does it himself illegally. And that's why, to this day,
We have a yellow line.
we have a yellow line. We were the only state that had a yellow line through 71, and then the rest of the country followed us, right?
Wow.
All I'm saying is we're coming up on the 100th anniversary of this guy doing this.
I think he should be celebrated.
There should be a statue.
There should
Yeah,
be.
there
Oh
should
my
be-
gosh.
right?
Yeah,
the
but
paint
then,
roller or
I
something.
mean,
paint
not in
roller.
Portland, but yeah, somewhere there should be a
Because-
statue.
And I think it really underscores like
Maybe in the
what's
gorge.
important about the job, right? Because this sheriff's officer undeniably did something that was illegal, right? He defaced many miles of public property, technically, but he saved at least 10,000 lives.
If we started with he did something illegal, do you think they would leave that statue alone come election season?
Well, like, all I'm saying, like,
It was in
I
the
know,
public
it's
Yeah,
a great
good.
story.
yeah,
I'm making a
yeah.
bad joke.
no,
It's
no,
a
I
great
agree.
story.
Like, it's complicated, right? Like, but I think that really underscores like what's
Was
important
he
about
a
the
white
job.
man? If
Yeah,
he
I'm
was, we
sure.
may not be able to correct this
Like,
statue within city limits.
I'm pretty sure he was.
Mm,
I can see the picture. You know, I don't know, but
I know. I ultimately, obviously, I agree with you. I mean, I think that's a great story. And
Yeah.
yes,
First time. Yeah.
if we can
first
have nice
hell.
things, there would be a statue of this hero.
I think
up.
he'd be on the motorcycle, right? That could be
Yeah, yeah.
That's
fun, you know.
great.
Like
I
I
love
don't
it.
know, I don't know.
Or
have
actively like painting a yellow
animatronic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, this goes into my next question because I've been asking people, do you have a favorite fair ride or Disneyland ride? Something like that.
Disneyland ride.
Any kind of ride.
I don't know about
Somebody,
that.
Kezia said Oaks Park rolling skating rink.
Oh, that's a good
That's
answer.
I think that
cool. It's
qualifies.
I do
not, I
like
don't think
that.
it's a ride, but that's cool.
I mean, I like
Really
a good
cool.
Ferris wheel.
Ferris wheel, yeah.
It's a silly one, but I like it.
Good
I've said this a
standard.
few times. Sometimes those ones do. You know when they're on like the roller
Yeah,
thing,
The
those ones make
zipper.
me kind of
That's the
queasy.
zipper.
But
Yeah, you
yeah.
don't want that.
you know what I'm saying. The cart on the Ferris wheel, it's like on a bar, and when you move, it swings.
Oh,
Mm.
Those
sure.
ones kind of make me sick. But
Yeah.
Yes.
but otherwise, I do like Ferris wheels. I like them.
Like, it's not the scariest. I mean, scary is not my thing when it comes to, I want to like
They're cool
wanna
though.
throw some balls and some pins and eat
Oh,
some
the little
cotton
games.
candy,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah. Win a
I don't know.
goldfish. Yeah.
Yeah, I did like the Multnomah County Fair this year was fun.
Where was that? Where did they do it at Oaks?
They do it at Oaks Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, they brought it back. It was gone for a number
That's
of
right.
years.
It was on pause. Or yeah.
Yeah, because we stopped being agricultural. Oops.
Yeah.
So no pig show.
They're fun. It's a kind of a weird thing. One of my first jobs, I used to do horse races in Oregon on the Oregon Racing Commission. I was contracted to do photo finish, where you sit there and do that,
Wow.
and video cameras. But I would go to a lot of the fairs. I went to Tillamook Fair, Burns. What's the one next to it? Prineville.
Yeah.
I go to all these fairs and work the horse races. But anyway,
Kirk County. Yeah. Right
so I've been
on.
to some fairs, but
I understand why we don't make the Rose Festival also the Multnomah County Fair.
I don't
that would make
either.
that'd be a good
Right.
good idea. That's another merge.
They happen the
Gosh.
same weekend. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
another good merge.
Merge it. We can
Let's
have
do
one
that,
county
yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said this at the event the other day, but do you have a favorite Taco Bell item?
I'm a Crunchwrap guy.
Yeah.
I can make it at home.
Have you tried?
Andy
Did you
thought
say if you?
I
that
make it
was
at home too. But
important.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
The crunch. You told me about that.
Yeah. Have you
right?
tried the Cheez-It one? Have you tried?
No, it's got a big cheese in it though, right?
In it, yeah. And I've also got the one that's just the Cheez-It, and that was disappointing. I'll say because you get it and it's all just a big soggy Cheez-It.
How do you make the crunch wrap at home?
You just put the stuff in and you wrap the tortilla. It's like a burrito that's really flat, right?
Okay. And you do what?
That
Put it in the
sounds good.
oven? Like put it in a frying pan? What do you
like
do
a
with
frying
it?
pan.
Okay.
Kinda, yeah.
Let's do it and do
Lid
it.
on it?
Yeah. Well,
Any oil? Any
just
butter?
a little bit of oil to keep it from
Uh-huh.
sticking. I wouldn't do a lid unless you were also trying to heat up the material.
Yeah.
The material
Okay.
that makes it sound really gross. The food that's in the tortilla.
I'm just checking the time here.
No Cheez-It Crunch Wrap. Get to have less evenings with an edible on a campaign trail.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up here because I might be hitting my limit here. But I was gonna say let's do an A/B test with a real Crunchwrap in that one.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, yeah, just if you're interested in voting for Daniel, vote for him. Where should people go in these last few days to?
Go to DeMelo4Portland.com. Go to my socials and go to the link tree too. I need as much help as possible going out and canvassing, going out and phone banking or texting. It's really rewarding. If you call someone in Portland and ask them what issue they think is most important, it's like a 90% chance they're going to say homelessness. So you get really good at talking about it. We need as much help as possible getting that message out there, getting people to understand that starting from the bottom of the ballot, ranking Daniel DeMelo first is the best way for us to make an impact across homelessness and across all these other issues. Please visit my website, check out my link tree on the socials, like, follow, subscribe, all that nonsense. I need your help. Portland needs your help. But together, I think we got it. I think this is the moment that we're going to change things. And I feel pretty confident about that. I have support, people I want, people I need. Got firefighters, got police, got EMTs, 911 operators on our side. This is the moment. Let's get out there and get it done.
Nice, nicely said. Yeah, thanks so much for coming back too. This was a
Yeah.
nice
Thanks,
full
Daniel.
circle kind of episode.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we'll do this again in a year, right?
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
it's going to start
So
again in
it'll
a
be our
year.
anniversary.
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much.